bill is going to be an administration bill, House Bill 550. The second bill will be House Bill 106, Delegate Williams, followed by House Bill 431, the Prince George's County delegation, and then House Bill 435, also the Prince George's County delegation. Following that will be House Bill 652, Delegate Boyce, then 659, Delegate Ahrens, House Bill 806, Delegate Chi, House Bill 828, Delegate Smith, and the final bill of the day will be House Bill 847. And to the members of the committee, after a brief pause, we will go into our first voting session after the public hearings. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to invite up the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland to testify with her panel, our friend Aruna Miller. Okay. My sister from another mother. Yeah, right. Okay, and I will just tell the witnesses, please don't push the buttons there. And you may begin, Madam Lieutenant Governor.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Barbe. Thank you for your lovely introduction, Vice Chair Stein, and the members of Environment and Transportation Committee, and our friends from Economic Matters. It's great to be here. I am Aruna Miller, Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, and I am so honored to be here to represent a bill for the Moore-Miller administration to testify in support of House Bill 550, Clean Transportation and Energy Act. Maryland has one of the most ambitious climate change plans in the nation, largely due to the work that your committee has spearheaded over the years, so thank you for that. And as a result, in 2020, Maryland exceeded its greenhouse gas reduction target of 25%, and instead achieved a 30% reduction from the 2006 levels. The Climate Solution Act of 2022, as passed through your committee, requires 60% reduction in economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 2031. That's 8 years away, so we must act swiftly, boldly, and thoughtfully. As you know, the transportation sector is now the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Maryland. Medium and heavy-duty vehicles account for 4% of vehicles on the road, and yet they are responsible for nearly 25% of total transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions. Furthermore, medium and heavy-duty vehicles disproportionately impact our most vulnerable residents, low-income communities, and communities of color, who often live near freight hubs, bus depots, and trucking corridors. Transitioning medium and heavy-duty trucks to zero-emission vehicles will be a key component in achieving additional reductions. And businesses agree that there is long-term cost savings and benefits that can be captured by decarbonizing commercial vehicles. Policy innovations such as House Bill 550 can expedite the market transition. House Bill 550, the Clean Transportation and Energy Act, will do this by creating incentives, not mandates. House Bill 550 will allow businesses and local governments to recoup 100% of the cost difference between combustion engine and zero-emission medium heavy-duty vehicles that they purchase or retrofit. House Bill 550 will extend the Maryland Energy Administration's electric vehicle supply equipment rebate program and expand the program to meet growing commercial and local government demand for electric vehicle infrastructure. And House Bill 550 will empower state agencies with the resources they need to make these programs both robust and effective. Studies show that by 2030, nearly half of the medium and heavy-duty trucks will be cheaper to buy, operate, and maintain as zero-emission vehicles than traditional combustion engine vehicles. And House Bill 550 will lead this charge. Through the increased demand for zero-emission vehicles, we can meet our clean energy goals while increasing job opportunities. One example of this is right here in Washington County. The Volvo Group, who will testify later, will share with you about their production facility in Hagerstown, Maryland, which employs hundreds of Marylanders building the engines and transmissions for heavy-duty vehicles and has already made investments in facilities that would test the production of zero-emission vehicles. Thank you, and I ask for your favorable report for House Bill 550.
Thank you very much. We have a panel of 6 witnesses, Safer Tool with the Governor's Legislative Office, Landon Farrag with MEA, Louis Campion with the Motor Truck Association, Kelly Colvin with Cisco, Jonathan Miller with the Volvo Group, and rounded out by Chris Hoagland with the Maryland Department of the Environment. So I will turn now to Safer Tool. Safe, welcome to the committee. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein, distinguished member of the joint session here in the Environment and the Transportation Committee, as well as the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, my name is Saif Ratul. I'm the Deputy Legislative Officer for Governor Moore. And I want to thank the Honorable Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller, for presenting the HB 550, the Clean Transportation and Energy Act. It is my privilege to be here today to share a little bit more detail about the HB 550 and to request a favorable committee report. This bill is intended to benefit all Marylanders. Our goal is to take on transportation-related emissions that have been a major contributor to climate change in this state and have been a disproportionate impact on our most vulnerable residents in the state. So, a few aspects of the bill. At first, it seeks to expand and extend our existing electric vehicle supply equipment rebate program. Since the program has been established, we have seen a rising demand for this program. And to address that, this bill will extend the current program to the year 2026 and remove the annual appropriation cap of $1.8 million. This will also provide additional flexibility for the Maryland Energy Administration to oversee, manage, and administer the program and will make the process more competitive. Second, this bill will expand our current medium and heavy-duty vehicle program that existed. This medium and heavy-duty vehicles contribute significantly to our greenhouse gas emissions. To address that, our program will incentivize people, businesses, and local government by providing up to 100% of the incremental cost through various rebates and grants. And we are defining incremental cost is the market value difference between a conventional vehicle and a same-class zero-emission vehicle. This bill also aims to provide up to 100% of the cost for charging equipment related to the medium and heavy-duty level zero-emission vehicles. So this will provide a significant financial incentives for local entities to purchase zero-emission vehicles that will not only increase the demand, but also will enhance Maryland's competitiveness in the region comparing to some of the other neighboring states. Third, this bill aims to alter the use of Alternative Compliance Payment Program, otherwise known as the ACP program, allowing the ACP revenues to be available in the General Strategic Energy Investment Fund, also known as the C Fund. This grant will provide that opportunity to continue a much greater investment in various low-income and environmental justice communities in energy-related loans and grants, renewable energy programs such as solar, and carving out these transportation section greenhouse emissions. So with that, I request a favorable committee report, and I look forward to working with our legislatures, this committee, and our stakeholders in partnership on any potential amendments to this bill. So I'm happy to answer any question later on or provide additional information as the committee requests. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll go to questions after all the people on your panel have testified. Next, we'll listen to Landon Farrag. Landon, welcome back.
Chairman, thank you so much. Members, thank you for having me today. For the record, my name is Landon Farrag. I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Maryland Energy Administration. Our written testimony contains some finer points that are specific to MEA. I encourage you to read it, but in the interest of time, I won't repeat that testimony here. Generally, this bill represents an important step in a transition to a clean energy economy. a paradigm shift for the transportation sector and for clean energy. It's also an important component of our efforts to combat greenhouse gas emissions. I would echo the Lieutenant Governor's sentiment today, as well as the testimony offered by the Governor's office. For the reasons stated, MEA urges a favorable report on House Bill 550, and I will remain available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, let's hear from Louis Campion, a frequent flyer in our committee, good friend. Louis, welcome back.
Slide this over and I won't touch the button, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
right.
So, thank you for the record, Louis Campion, Maryland Motor Truck Association. We certainly understand the continued need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. We have members that are pilot testing zero-emission vehicles, typically battery electric today. Those tests are on a small scale, but they are certainly a growing interest. Typically, those are trucking companies that are engaged in local or regional haul deliveries, operating predominantly in Maryland, and then returning to those terminals back for charging each evening. And those test results have been very positive for the companies that are doing that. The drivers tend to like these vehicles. They are quieter. They obviously don't have the tailpipe emissions, and they offer a very smooth ride. There are two real hurdles to trucking companies adopting this technology. There are certainly some operational limitations, but if you have met those operational limitations, those hurdles are infrastructure and financial cost up front of the vehicles, which we've talked about in this committee before. The cost is typically 2 to 3 times higher than a traditional powered vehicle. I have a real-world example from one company in our membership in my written comments, so I won't get into that specifically. And there is just a lack of any available public charging infrastructure today for medium and heavy-duty vehicles. Our industry is one that is made up of small businesses. The big trucking companies, but 90% of the trucking industry runs 6 trucks or fewer. And those upfront costs are dramatic for companies of that size. These vehicles are coming, but if the state is serious about moving to a zero-emission truck future, we have to have that financial assistance, and we certainly appreciate the governor's office and the administration introducing this legislation to try and help with those, and we ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis. Next, we'll hear from Kelly Colvin with Cisco.
Hi, good afternoon. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Kelly Colvin, and I'm here today on behalf of Cisco to support House Bill 550. Cisco is the global leader in the distribution, selling, and marketing of food and food products. Our customer base includes restaurants, healthcare facilities, lodging establishments, and other customers who prepare meals away from home. In Maryland, our broadline distribution facilities in Jessup and Delegate Terrace's district, and Pocomoke City in Delegate Otto's district service thousands of Maryland customers each year. As a recognized food service industry leader in sustainability, Cisco feels a very real obligation to reduce our carbon footprint. It is for this reason we have made the commitment to electrify 35% of our fleet by the year 2030. Actions that have followed this pledge include signing an MOU with Daimler's Freightliner unit to purchase up to 800 of their E-Cascadias, deploying 40 EV trucks to our fleet in Riverside, California this year, as well as being in various stages of EV implementation at dozens of other sites across the United States, including Maryland, where we'll begin outfitting Cisco Baltimore with 10 electric trucks by the year 2023. Jessup represents our first electrification effort on the East Coast, and we're very grateful for Governor Moore and the legislature's recognition that without public-private partnerships, projects like this are very hard to get off the ground. By way of an example, one Class 8 diesel truck costs about $125,000 versus a Class 8 electric truck, which costs around $400,000. In addition to the truck, charging stations cost $100,000 per unit. There are infrastructure needs, engineering costs, as well as workforce development costs to train our drivers, as well as our mechanics on how to use the vehicles. All in, this type of endeavor can cost tens of millions of dollars per site. But the benefits are very tangible. Removing just one Class 8 diesel truck from the road and replacing it with an electric truck is the equivalent of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from 10 passenger cars. If continued, the EV Fleet Incentive Program in Maryland has the potential to help Cisco reduce the equivalent of greenhouse gas emissions from over 950 passenger cars, which equates to 492,000 gallons of gasoline and 4,307 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I urge the committee to give House Bill 550 a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's turn now to Jonathan Miller with the Volvo Group North America.
Thank you, Chairman Barve, and thank you to the committee for having me here today to testify in support of House Bill 550. My name is Jonathan Miller, and I head up government relations for Volvo Group in North America. We are a global supplier of commercial trucks, buses, construction equipment, and marine and industrial engines. We have about 14,000 U.S. employees. And in Maryland, our Hagerstown powertrain facility employs nearly 2,000 people. It is our sole powertrain facility for North America. 1,400 of them are members of UAW Locals 171 and 1247. We also have 60 people in a parts distribution facility in Elkridge. We also happen to be the last major automotive manufacturer in the state of Maryland. Our Hagerstown plant develops and manufactures and tests heavy-duty powertrains, transmissions, and axles for our Mack and Volvo Trucks brands, as well as for Prevost and Volvo buses at our 280-acre campus. The Hagerstown plant manufactures all modular power boxes. These are the electronic brains of an electric truck, and we do that for both our Volvo VNR electric truck and our Mack LR electric refuse truck. Last year in 2022, Mack and Volvo were the market leaders in this new Class 8 electric truck market. But I would emphasize that it's at the very beginning stages when you compare us to the light-duty industry. We are only now just moving into this zero-emission space. Volvo Group is supporting the Paris Climate Agreement and Science-Based Target Initiative. Our goal is to be 100% fossil-free by 2040, and we've set another goal of being 35% battery electric in everything that we sell by 2030. So to do that, we're going to need good policies, and we have to work together in public-private partnerships. And that's why we think that the incentive bill that the governor has put forward is a really helpful tool. It was noted about the extremely high costs of battery electric trucks. They are 2 to 4 times more expensive than their diesel counterparts. That's because batteries are very large and they are very expensive. In time, those prices will come down, but today they are very high. And the other main challenge is charging infrastructure. Lewis talked about it. There is no heavy-duty charging infrastructure today available. We have 3 public charging stations in the country today for heavy-duty trucks, so we've got a lot of work to do together to roll up our sleeves and provide the conditions that are going to be necessary to help us make this transition. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then finally on this panel, Chris Hoagland with MDE.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thanks for having me. I'm Chris Hogan. I'm the Director of the Air and Radiation Administration at the Department of the Environment. MDE supports House Bill 550, which will help the state transition to the use of zero-emission vehicles. Medium and heavy-duty trucks are one of the most prevalent sources of air pollution in communities facing environmental injustice in Maryland. Electrifying these vehicles will provide significant direct air quality benefits to those communities and contribute to statewide progress on clean air. Electrifying heavy-duty vehicles is also a priority for climate change. As has been noted, the transportation sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Maryland. We've made a lot of progress over the last few decades reducing greenhouse gas emissions under the Climate Solutions Now Act passed last year. We have a lot more work to do to meet the new goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2031 and to net zero by 2045. Further reductions from the transportation system are absolutely necessary to achieve those goals. The bill will enhance incentives for owners and operators to purchase the vehicles and to install the charging infrastructure to operate them, and will complement other work the General Assembly and MDE is undertaking, for example, to implement the Advanced Clean Trucks rule in Maryland. For these reasons, MDE urges favorable report for House Bill 550. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are more people who are signed up in favor, but I will entertain questions at this moment if anybody has any. Well, seeing none, you come away unscathed. That's a good thing. Okay, then let me just proceed to the next people who are going to be, thank you very much, Madam Lieutenant Governor, and to your staff. Next, let's go to Pete Kitzmiller, Matthew Chen are the last two people who were signed up purely favorable, and then we'll go to favorable with amendments and okay, well, Matthew is here, so why don't you start, and hopefully the word will get to Pete if he's not testifying someplace else.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Matthew Chen, Director of Government Affairs for Blink Charging Company. I'm honored to testify on behalf of the company in support of House Bill 550, the Clean Transportation and Energy Act. Blink is a leader in the electric vehicle charging industry. We have deployed nearly 66,000 charging points across 27 countries. Last year, Blink acquired Maryland-based SemiConnect, an EV charging manufacturer and network services company based in Bowie. I'm pleased to inform you that Blink will expand its Bowie facility by 30,000 square feet, investing $49 million over 10 years and creating 60 new jobs. House Bill 550 is essential to strengthen Maryland's competitiveness for EV investments. We commend Governor Wes Moore, the Lieutenant Governor, and the General Assembly for your leadership to advance zero-emission transportation. Already, the Maryland Energy Administration has successfully overseen EV infrastructure programs, such as the Charge Ahead Grant Program for Level 2 charging stations. Maryland seeks to have 600,000 EVs on state roads by 2030, and as of this past January, there are now more than 64,000 EVs registered in the state. According to the Maryland Department of Transportation, that's an increase of nearly 2,000 within a month. We've made major progress, but we have even more to do. We strongly support House Bill 550 and welcome the proposed extension of the Electric Vehicle Recharging Equipment Rebate Program through fiscal year 2026. We also support removing the limit on the maximum amount of rebates that MEA may award. The proposal to cover up to 100% of the incremental cost of a qualified medium or heavy-duty zero-emission vehicle will encourage fleet operators to switch to much cleaner options. In closing, Blink appreciates your consideration of our comments and your commitment to ensuring that EV charging is affordable, reliable, and widely accessible across the great state of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Pete Kitzmiller around? Okay, I have to say, this is Matthew. I'm looking at the sign-up sheet. Are you really at 4961 Tesla Drive?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Ironic. Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Now we have a number of people who are signed up favorable with amendments. And they are, the first three are Ellen Valentino, Josh Tolkien, Mike Halloran, and, well, you know, Lynn Heller and Kim Coble are also signed up. So if the five of you can squish up front, that would be terrific.
Thank you.
Would you like to start?
I will, and thank
Ellen?
you. Mr. O'Halloran will not be attending this hearing. Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Valentino. I'm here today on behalf of the Mid-Atlantic Petroleum Dealers Association, and I signed up favorable with the amendment because I didn't want the hearing to come and go without talking about the repeal of the service station incentive program in this, and why maybe it's been underutilized for so many years, which might have been the rationale for repealing that. And that's because I never thought there was a real understanding by our industry or policymakers about the cost of installing electric vehicle charging equipment in the service station or convenience store realm. And I think they're a critical industry with respect to this state moving forward and making sure that there is, they call it, I don't know, driving anxiety, or that there's an infrastructure in place that can sustain not just interstate travelers, but intrastate travelers as well. Just to give you an idea, the cost of installing a forced charging system within a service station probably is around $350,000. That includes the chargers, the electrical infrastructure. It's pretty significant. So my hope is just to open that conversation here. Maybe there are other policies we can look at, whether it's a personal property tax exemption, or at least some kind of recognition that this type of industry and business owner needs to be looked at maybe differently in order to accomplish the goal and the other policy objectives here in this state. So that's why you have favorable with amendment. I have to be part of the conversation, and again, I didn't want the hearing to go without that recognition. Thank you.
It's always great to have you as a part of the conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Josh Tolkien, welcome back to the committee, Josh.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Josh Tolkien on behalf of the Maryland chapter of the Sierra Club and our 70,000 members and supporters urge a favorable report with some amendments on this critical legislation. I really appreciate the governor and the lieutenant governor's leadership in elevating the importance of providing rebates to both medium and heavy duty trucks as well as the charging systems. These trucks are a smaller proportion of our overall fleet, but have a disproportionate impact on both greenhouse gas emissions as well as harmful air pollution. We think that this does need to be paired with the Advanced Clean Truck Rule, which we've already spoken with your committee about. This legislation also would provide incentives or augment existing incentives for promoting solar energy, particularly within overburdened and disadvantaged communities. We do urge aligning the legislation with the definition created under CSNA to use those now state codified terms of overburdened and underserved. Currently, the state is behind on deployment of renewable energy and specifically its solar energy goals. That is in fact part of the source of the funding here, and ensuring that a minimum percentage of the funding in this program go to renewable energy will allow us to strike the right balance between expanding the truck funding while also ensuring that we're maintaining a level of funding for clean renewable energy. And we have full confidence in the committee finding the right balance between those two for this important source of funding. With that, we appreciate the chance to testify today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kim Coble, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've lost my voice, so I'm going to be really brief, but I did want to make sure, I'm Kim Coble with the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and I did want to make sure that you understood our deep support for this bill. Great bill. We do have some suggested amendments that we've put into our written testimony. We've given to the administration. We look forward to working with them on those, and unless there's questions, I'll be brief.
All right, we have a virtual witness, Lynn Heller with the Climate Access Fund. Lynn, are you with us? And if you are, welcome, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I am with you, and I hope you can see somehow my video is...
Yes, you're there.
Okay.
We see and hear you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, again, my name is Lynn Heller. I am the founder and CEO of the Climate Access Fund, which is a statewide nonprofit green bank that uses innovative finance to increase low-income participation, specifically in community solar. We fill gaps in the market that are preventing more low-income households from benefiting. We support HB 550 with 2 amendments. First, we recommend a cap be placed on 30% on annual compliance funds used for clean transportation efforts. The reason being that we want to make sure that sufficient funds remain for the benefit of low-income or environmental injustice communities through solar power. The Clean Energy Jobs Act, as you all know, requires that all RPS compliance funds be used to incentivize low-income access to solar. HB 550 proposes to divert some of that funding to be used for clean transportation. Because transportation is such an important sector in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, followed closely by buildings, the Climate Access Fund appreciates the Governor Moore's interest in using some of these compliance funds for transportation. But we're concerned that without a cap placed and only with language stating that the administration shall prioritize low-income and EJ benefit, that all compliance funds in theory could be spent by this administration or a future administration on clean transportation, leaving nothing to benefit the 450,000 low-income households in Maryland that very few of whom have access to solar. The second amendment we request is that all SEEF and compliance funds that are targeting low-income and EJ communities be limited to supporting projects that are below 1 megawatt in size and those that are located on rooftops and parking lots. Oh, and I see I'm out of time. The reason being the private market.
Go ahead and complete your thought.
Thank you. Private markets already cover projects that are above 1 megawatt. Public funds shouldn't be used to support project development that would happen without it. Thank you so much for your time.
We have a question from one of our friends from the Economic Matters Committee. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, Josh, I have a question, and it's very narrow, and just brief response is good. Have you seen these, and before I ask the question, this bill speaks to these medium and heavy-duty trucks. Can you tell me what you think that's going to do and how that's going to help expand that marketplace through this bill? Or does it not have an effect?
Oh, at the time, I think that rebates for charging equipment and for trucks is useful to incentivize the industry. We believe that in a lot of cases, the trucks are competitive, and combined with state goals and pending advanced clean truck rule, a lot of people have to make that transition. But I think in some cases, having rebates and incentives will also certainly help out with some businesses that may need or desire more rebates to take earlier action.
Right, okay, so I mean, I see in the bill that there's a grant, and I haven't read the bill close enough to carry the conversation beyond where I'm getting ready to head. I was at the Detroit Auto Show this past year, and I saw for the first time a medium-sized, these weren't commercial vehicles like a semi-truck, but large box trucks, and the sheer size or scale of these batteries was, I'll use the word impressive. They were big, and since you're the organization that advocates for environmental policy, what is your thoughts on the vast expansion of battery construction, what it's going to take to do the mining to create these batteries, and then what do we do with these batteries when we are done with them? I think this is a valid question that your organization surely would be interested in, one, and then two, where do you see policy going as it relates to that?
I'm happy to attempt to answer the question. I would say I think that might be more germane for the bill sponsors or the advocates. I would leave that up to the chair.
Right.
Well, whatever. Yeah. I'm not going to force anybody to say anything. You're probably correct in your assessment.
Yeah. The only editorial I'd have to that is that these batteries were not small by any means, and technology will surely improve over time. But when I think Sierra Club, I think I hike the Appalachian Trail. I go on trips, and I'm thinking just generally through the lens of mining, the volume of cobalt that has to occur, and I do think that Sierra Club would be on the lead on issues related to what do we do post use of the batteries, and would like to hopefully think that that's part of maybe not this bill, but certainly a larger discussion that your organization would be right there for. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. And first, I do look forward to seeing you on one of the hikes coming up this spring. We'll send you the calendar.
I've done 200 miles of it. So.
Oh, awesome. And I'll have information we'll share with the committee. We are looking into long-term, more equitable storage and disposal situations, and I also believe there'll be a task force enabled by the Climate Solutions Now Act intended to look further into this issue.
I was going to comment as to that. Yeah. Okay, there appear to be no further questions. Thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 550. Let's proceed to House Bill 106. Delegate Williams, welcome back to the committee. And Delegate Williams, if you have a panel you'd like to bring up, please invite them to do so.
I do, Mr. Chair. I think I have with me Mayor Emmett Jordan. I have a couple other individuals here. I'm not certain who all you have on your list as well.
Dan Woomer.
Yes.
Susan McCutchen is virtual. Kyle Hart, Suzanne Schuyler, and Anne Marie Belton, and Takisha James is also virtual.
Yes.
So we'll do the virtual people last, and the in-person people first. That's the That's what we do in this committee, at least. So once you're ready to get started, you have 4 minutes and you have the floor.
Okay. All of my notes situated. Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Nicole Williams, a delegate of District 22, and I'll be testifying today in favor of House Bill 106, also known as the State Finance and Prohibited Appropriations Magnetic Levitation Transportation System. Wanted to kind of talk a little bit. First, I know that you will hear people who will be testifying in opposition to this bill, citing the perceived transportation benefits, which you have my written testimony, so I'm not going to rehash what you already have in front of you, but I will just simply state that the perceived transportation benefits are not fully there, as there are no approvals from any other jurisdiction besides the state of Maryland, and they'll cite that this is going to go up and down the 95 corridor, but we have no definite approvals or guarantees with regards to that, or the economic benefits that this would have in the sense of bringing jobs to local businesses. And we believe that this project is a little bit different than, say, the Purple Line or the proposed Red Line project in Baltimore, or the Southern Maryland Rapid Transit System that will actually touch local communities. And in addition, you will hear the perception that the people who are in favor of this bill are against mass transportation, which is inaccurate. We're very much in favor of mass transit. But we do have concerns about the environmental impacts that this project would have, and just really the impacts that this state would have on the state. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is a little bit of history around this project. And so back in 1998, there was federal funding that was authorized to implement a maglev system in the United States. And this funding lapsed back in 2003. And although the act did not result in the implementation of the system at that time, several states did express an interest, including Maryland, particularly because they felt that this would reduce travel between Baltimore and DC. And MDOT at that time began devoting a lot of funding to the development and evolution of the maglev system in fiscal year 2001. At that time, FRA and MDOT conducted an environmental impact study for the project, which was required by the National Environmental Policy Act. That final EIS was never published because the state legislation in 2003 and 2004 enacted legislation that prohibited the funding of a maglev project following the final report of the task force to evaluate the development and construction of the magnetic levitation transit system. In its final report that was issued in 2003, the task force noted, among other challenges, a significant amount of funding would be required to implement the system. And as a result, during that 2003 session, the General Assembly prohibited spending any state funding to study, develop, or construction that device. During the 2004 sessions, these provisions were modified to prohibit any state and federal funding. So why are we back here? Well, because in 2011, the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act that was passed by the General Assembly repealed those prohibitions. And so what this bill does, it simply is seeking to reenact the legislation that was previously enacted by this very body back in 2003 and 2004. And so I will allow the rest of my panel to kind of talk about some of the other things that you have already seen in the written testimony that has been submitted before you. But I do ask that you do please give a favorable report to House Bill 106. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay. Give us your name and then please
Good afternoon.
proceed.
My name is Emmett Jordan, Mayor of the City of Greenbelt, and I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 106. Any state resources that could go to the proposed maglev would be far better spent on sustaining and improving rail and local transit services. High-speed Amtrak services, the MTA, the Red Line, WMATA, MARC trains, they provide far greater benefit to Marylanders in terms of access and affordability. Funding for these services, funding for bicycle and pedestrian connections, and better ways to move commuters to our transit hubs, that's the best place where we need to put our taxpayer revenues. Second, the information presented to the public about the maglev still does not show operating and maintenance costs offsetting revenues. There are huge unanswered questions about the financial viability of the project. So, the project was touted to be a public-private partnership, to be a private venture, And if the private sector is going to own this, if they're going to build it and own it, they need to pay for it. The Federal Railway Administration, the draft environmental impact statement on the project was released back in 2021, and there are reasons why it's still on hold. The city, Greenbelt, we performed our own thorough review of the project and uncovered many, many pages worth of errors and omissions. And we did submit that in our say on the matter. So the ridership estimates and the projections were grossly inflated. So I'll say it again, there are reasons why this environmental impact statement is still on hold. Thirdly, the maglev, for my community and for residents, Prince George's County residents all up and down the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, the environmental impacts, just the general impacts are extreme. So from our point of view, just sensitive environmental resources and habitats and 89 acres of wetlands and
If you could
30
wrap
acres.
up your testimony. By the way, I don't have
I
your
am an
name.
elected official, yeah.
I don't have your name written down as a witness. What's your name, sir?
Emmett Jordan, Anne Marie Belton, the city clerk, actually submitted
I
my
see.
name.
So
Is that okay?
So I read Anne Marie. So you're here instead of Anne Marie. Okay.
Yes, the mayor
got
of
it.
City of Greenbelt, yes.
Got it. Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so in
thank you very
summary, I
much.
just want to say state resources that could potentially be allocated to this project in the future be better spent on existing local rail and transit services. The taxpayers deserve this. So on behalf of the City of Greenbelt, we urge you to support House Bill 106.
Okay, who would like to go next?
I'll go ahead. Good afternoon, Chairman Barve and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Kyle Hart. I'm here today on behalf of the National Parks Conservation Association, or NPCA. NPCA was founded in 1919, and our mission is to protect and enhance America's national park system for present and future generations. We have more than 1.7 million members and supporters nationwide, with more than 34,000 of those in Maryland. I'm obviously here today in support of House Bill 106. As background, NPCA has been tracking this proposed project, the proposed maglev, for more than a decade, and its most recent proposal showed NPCA and really all Marylanders why this project would be so harmful to the state. In the most recent draft environmental impact statement, which was released in January of 2021, it was clear that the environmental impacts of this project would be tremendous. The maglev would increase regional transportation energy consumption by 39%, enough to power nearly 90,000 homes. This equates to 336 million additional kilograms of carbon dioxide released per year, fueling the climate crisis instead of helping it. The project would take nearly 90 acres of National Park Service property, 187 acres of the Beltsville Agricultural Research Facility, and 24 acres of the Patuxent Research Reserve. In total, 293 acres of federally protected property could be negatively harmed by this project. That, of course, doesn't mention the numerous local parks at Greenbelt and others, streams, wetlands, hundreds of acres of forest, and more. At its core, maglev is nothing more than a massive infrastructure project that will require large amounts of land in an already heavily developed area that will require massive amounts of electricity to operate. It's clear that state transportation dollars would be better spent on other projects across the state, such as the Red Line, MARC, and Amtrak, which is why we continue to urge you to support House Bill 106. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I neglected to identify our friends from Appropriations, Delegate Watson, Edelson, who was here, and of course, we love your cornbread. All right. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I'm Daniel Lee Wilmer, Maryland Coalition for Responsible Transit Board member and a member of the Citizens Against the SC Maglev, here in support of House Bill 106. The maglev we see today dates back to 1960. Several U.S. cities and states looked at maglev and all of them opted out. In 2003, Maryland opted out, noting the exorbitant cost. The 2017 FRA's approved Amtrak Northeast Corridor Environmental Impact Study found that once the rail system upgrades currently underway are completed, the rail system will have the capacity needed for passenger service without building a new rail route. That was pre-COVID. The ridership projections then were far higher. Today you will hear maglev, SC maglev will create jobs. You will hear that a SC maglev will pay for itself. But after all these years, we haven't seen the analysis supporting these claims. MCRT challenges these claims with actual research analysis that can be found on our website. But the one opposition point I find most amusing is passage of this bill will send the wrong message. Maryland is not interested in high tech. Really? A simple internet query shows Maryland is one of the world's leading regions for high tech and innovation. Johns Hopkins University, its hospitals, and the Applied Physics Laboratory, and other research facilities. Northrop Grumman and its Advanced Technology Laboratory, NSA Cybersecurity Center, National Institute of Health, University of Maryland, its hospitals, campuses, and research facilities, and many other universities, advanced biotech, research, engineering companies, and laboratories. But the passage of this bill and this legislation will show most Marylanders are smart enough not to buy a pig in a poke. In summary, MCRT is available to meet with you and your staff to share our research, analysis, and findings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call up Suzanne Schuyler. Okay. Pardon me? Schuyler, pardon me.
But it looks
And Rhonda Krantz, if you could come up also, that would be terrific.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Suzanne, forgive me for mispronouncing your name.
Thank you. I am Suzanne Schuyler from the Maryland Coalition for Responsible Transit, and I'm here to support SB 106. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. The general issues that we have are CO2 emissions, false job statistics, environmental changes, social injustices, ridership inaccuracies, electromagnetic fields with the health to humans and wildlife, conservation interference, interference with our aquifers, noise and vibration, loss of green space, watershed interference, inflationary costs to build the train and maintain it, prohibitive ticket fee costs, and is not small business friendly because there's only 3 stops in Cherry Hill, BWI, and DC. The Friends of Earth in Japan had a tunnel collapse during the construction of their maglev system, cutting off their livelihood. There's also guideway issues where it has to stop suddenly due to an obstacle in the guideway. It can lift, or another accident like what happened in Germany in 2006, killing 23 people. It's not human operated. It will use switches, which is an engineering problem. No standards have been set for this magnetic driven train system. BWRR has taken over property and causing major disturbances next to the NASA Research Center for a 24/7 yard for maintenance, repairs, and large equipment, disturbing the quiet atmosphere required for the NASA Research Center. BWRR initially stated that they would not use eminent domain on properties, but they've already pursued eminent domain in the Baltimore Westport area. They also have some unsubstantiated numbers, and MCRT proves the inaccuracies of these claims. When we used a FOIA request for ridership, it was so redacted that no information was actually provided. This is not a proven technology, and the perception that Maryland is not an innovative state for this project is the result of uninformed people, communities, organizations, agencies, and politicians that have either not gotten all the facts for whatever reason or do not care because it does not affect them, but it will in taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, let me recognize Rhonda Krantz. Oh, is she virtual? She signed up as being in person. Well, let's go to the first virtual person, and maybe she'll turn up. Susan, let me make sure every in-person, yeah. Susan McCutchen, are you with us?
Yes, I am. And
Terrific. When we're able to see you, you can welcome.
I apologize. My video might geek out. It's been acting funny lately.
Oh, don't.
Like that. So
we can
I'm
hear.
going to stop the video.
We can hear you, so that's the.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Okay, go ahead and start.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan McCutchen, Chair Barbe and Committee. It's good to see you all. I am speaking in support of HB 106, sponsored by Delegate Nicole Williams. The bill should be acceptable to BWRR and the Northeast Maglev. As they repeatedly state, they are a private company and will not need to seek state funds. Interestingly, one of their stated arguments in opposition to the bill is that while they do not need state funds, they want them to be available just in case financial support is needed later. a declared self-sustaining private enterprise, they are actively seeking Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funds to continue to tap into the taxpayer funds they are liberally spending in the development phase of the proposed project. Furthermore, they proffer the hackneyed argument that such legislation would send the wrong message to developers of innovative forms of transportation and discourage them from doing business in Maryland. The reality is this bill will address only one specific overblown proposed project that has proven unable to support broad and questionable promises of an influx of good-paying jobs, advanced technology education programs, and the uplifting of environmental justice communities to bring them and the state untold prosperity. The SC Maglev project will face financial difficulties as the projected costs increase exponentially and the actual work is undertaken. As a result, the ability of BWRR to continue or complete the project will be curtailed, and they will seek funds from Maryland and the federal government. Government funds are taxpayer dollars we the people will pay and already have from a chunk of federal government funds allocated to undertake the study and meet NEPA requirements. Thank you for this opportunity to provide favorable testimony. I look forward to HB 106 moving out of committee and going forward.
Thank you very much. Let me now turn to Takisha James from the town of Bladensburg, who is also virtual. Mayor James, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barve. Thank you also, Vice Chair Stein, and to the members of the committee. Again, my name is Takisha James, and I serve as mayor for the town of Bladensburg, which is located in Prince George's County, and want to thank you for the opportunity to give favorable testimony on behalf of the town council and nearly 10,000 residents for HB 106, sponsored by Delegate Nicole Williams. The town of Bladensburg lies directly along the proposed route of the SC Maglev, and therefore my community, as was stated by other supporters of this bill, has a number of concerns from environmental to structural impacts, particularly given that some of our buildings date back to the 1700s. But that's not the focus of today's testimony. Today, we're really concerned with simply protecting Maryland taxpayers from any unknown financial risks that can arise with a project like this. The developer, Baltimore Washington Rapid Rail, has communicated publicly and repeatedly that this project will be privately funded and not rely on government funding. The truth is, this project has already benefited from taxpayer dollars, such as the money from the United States Department of Transportation with the award of $27.8 million by the Federal Railroad Administration. The bill today that we're asking for your support with would simply protect our local residents from any sort of financial risk associated with this project. We believe the strength of the American economy is in allowing the consumer market to dictate which businesses succeed or fail. And looking through the lens of history, there have been enough cases where the unthinkable occurred, and we simply want to protect our residents from the unthinkable. I want to again thank each member of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. I do have extended testimony in writing that was submitted, but for the sake of time, I yield back the floor. Thank you so much, Mr. Barve.
Not at all, thank you. And finally, before we go to questions, just want to give Rhonda Krantz another opportunity to speak if she's here or if she's virtual. Not here?
There's 2 other people that are here that they believe signed up.
There's nobody else signed up, and I have a long day. I'm going to go to questions. The first question goes to Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank my colleague, Delegate Nicole Williams, for bringing this forward and reminding us about the history of this whole project. And as you may know, I think, Delegate, you do know that I was on that original task force and that we did look extensively at this technology a long time ago. And so I have to ask a question. So I'm going to ask you, are you aware that I participated in that? And also that what you're proposing here is really to reinstate state policy, which was adopted before 2011. And we just want to go back to making sure that we protect the treasury of the state. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Delegate Healy. And yes, and thank you for all your service those years ago on that task force.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Williams, thank you for bringing this bill forward. I share your concerns and many of the panel's concerns as well. My question is a little bit different, but also about these concerns. So I was just doing some quick back of the paper math here and Googling some things here, looking up maglev and looking up a couple other things. So I just want to point a couple things out. So as one of the panelists said, we're talking about what, like a 50 or 60-year-old technology here, give or take. I mean, it's a long time, the 60s or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's been around since the 60s, yes.
Sure. So looks like to me, just looking, top speed of a maglev is about 375 miles per hour, which is really fast, right?
Roughly, yes.
But then I was looking at Hyperloop, right? And the Chinese government just rolled out their first Hyperloop train. They just tested it like 2 days ago. Top speed of that train is 621 miles per hour, much faster, right? So my question is, as a state, why should we be investing in technologies that are already 50 or 60 years old and are antiquated, considerably antiquated? Why would we not want to look at other, maybe more modern forms of technology that might make more sense than a project like this? And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you so much. I wasn't certain of the exact speeds of the Hyperloop, but I had heard of the project and knew that it was something that they were trying. I think that's a policy question we have to ask ourselves. We are definitely wanting to invest as a state in more mass transit, and we have a number of projects currently in the works, like the Purple Line, for example. I know there have been talks about revitalizing the Red Line project to basically really help move, large swaths of Marylanders for them to get from point A to point B to be able to go to work easier and to be able to do all the things that folks enjoy doing and being able to get there in a quick and efficient manner. And I don't think anyone who is on this panel is against that. I think we just have concerns about this project, kind of what we've seen thus far. But the Hyperloop project, I mean, there are still some concerns with that one as well. But, we're more than happy to look at it. 600 miles per hour, that seems really fast.
Absolutely, it is very fast, but it just seems to me that it doesn't make sense to be looking at 60-year-old technologies when there's other alternatives out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Delegate Williams, for bringing forward this bill. So I wanted to ask two things about the DEIS and EIS process, and then I had a specific question for Mayor Jordan. So my question is, from looking at the Federal Railroad Administration site, it looks like this process was paused after the public hearings back in 2021. So the draft EIS came out in January, then there were some public hearings in early April, and I'm not sure at what point after that. It looks like relatively soon after that, FRA kind of put a pause on transitioning, going from the DEIS to the EIS. Have they put out, or any idea when they might put out a new project schedule, an updated project schedule, any word at all?
We have not received any word about when the new project schedule will be released. I'm sure, hopefully BRW can maybe answer that, but we haven't seen, it's still on pause. We haven't seen any indication that it's going to resume or a new timeline or anything at this point. So that's where the project is currently.
Is that something any of our congressional delegation would have any insight into? Do you know, or
possibly?
Worth asking. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. Then the other question, and again, I don't expect you to know this right now. If you could do follow up, how unusual is that to have, an indefinite pause between a DEIS and an EIS? Does that happen? Does anyone know?
Yeah, according to members of my panel, I don't know if Mr. Wilmer, you want to speak on that, but it seems to be pretty unusual.
That's what I thought. In another life, I was an environmental reporter on the Hill. And is it unusual to not give a specific reason why there's been a pause put on?
It's not unusual, especially this is the second pause. Having retired from 3 decades of federal service with the Department of Energy, this is the most unusual pause that I've seen. To have a second pause is unusual. For it to go this long without any word, is exceptionally unusual. And this pause has also placed the Army Corps of Engineers on pause on the permitting review process, wetlands, et cetera. So they're on hold. And again, this is, in my experience, with 3 decades with federal service, this is very unusual.
Okay. And am I correct that no official reason was given, no deliberate reason
No,
for the pause?
And having had an opportunity to speak with the team members, et cetera, obviously you're not going to tell us what, deliberative process is. But they say they needed time to go through this. Our best assessment is so much information came in response, questioning the DEIS, questioning components of it. Our own response that we put together was 395 pages, okay? It left them with a stack of work to do. And they really couldn't, at that point in time, couldn't figure out did not have a clue what the timeline would be.
Thank you. And then Mayor Jordan, just briefly, did the city of Greenbelt get any kind of response to its written concerns about the draft EIS?
Now, Delegate Lehman, we've received no feedback, no response.
Okay.
So we're wondering, we're waiting, and we'd really like to know what's going to happen next. Hopefully, what will happen next is this bill will come out of committee and pass favorably, and we can look to the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there appear to be no further questions. We'll proceed to the opponents of the bill. In person, we have Jeff Guido and Ian Rainey. If you could please come up. And virtually, we have two individuals as well. We'll take them after the in-person individuals. Who'd like to go first? Don't touch the buttons. Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize for that. Chairman Barbe, Vice Chair Stein, my name is Ian Rainey. I'm here to represent Baltimore Washington Rapid Rail to convey our strong opposition to HB 106. BWRR is a railroad franchised by the Maryland Public Service Commission, PSC, to operate a 311-mile-per-hour superconducting magnetic levitation train between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Once constructed, the train will take passengers between Baltimore and Washington in just 15 minutes. As noted by the PSC, the project will result in substantial economic and societal benefit to Baltimore and the state of Maryland. And importantly, the project is not requesting any state appropriations. Despite that fact, HB 106 aims to prohibit any appropriations from being used by the state for a maglev project. One of the arguments behind this bill seems to be that Maryland taxpayers should not be on the hook for a project like ours, and that such a use of funds would be to the detriment of existing rail. This ignores the fact that the Federal Railroad Administration has concluded in its draft environmental impact statement that the maglev project would, in fact, alleviate pressure on existing rail infrastructure. Passing a bill that prevents the state of Maryland from pursuing remedies to resolve the state's transportation challenges is simply a statement that we cannot support. It also could create a host of unintended consequences. We recently heard from Lieutenant Governor Miller about the importance of supporting the use of electric vehicles in Maryland. HB 106 would be similar to the state declaring 10 or 15 years ago that no state support could be given to advancing the goal of increasing EV use. For these reasons, Baltimore-Washington Rapid Rail strongly opposes HB 106, and we urge the committee to submit an unfavorable report. Thank you very much for the opportunity to appear.
Thank you. Jeff, welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair and committee members. I'm Jeffrey Guido here on behalf of the Baltimore DC Metro Building Trades Council. We support this project. The North American Building Trade Unions has an MOU to build this project with Baltimore Washington Rapid Rail with a project labor agreement. The projected 74,000 jobs that the project would create would be a major boon for the local and state economies. If you figure that the average worker is going to make $100,000 a year, times 74,000, that's $7.4 billion you're going to be putting into circulation in those communities. With the 5% income tax rate, that's $370 million of income coming back to the state. Then you add your sales tax into it, that much money in circulation is unheard of. And we urge of the committee for an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Just a quick thing, oh, wait a minute. I have virtual witnesses. I have Kendrick Tillman and Daniel Mackey. So Kendrick Tillman, are you with us? And if you are, welcome to the committee. Nope. How about Daniel Mackey? And Danny Mackey. Okay. Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Chair Barve and members of the committee, my name is Danny Mackey, and I'm here to request that you give HB 106 an unfavorable report. Proponents of this legislation engage in a proxy argument surrounding various aspects of maglev trains, but this legislation has nothing to do with the merits of a maglev train in Maryland. This legislation seeks only to shackle tomorrow's leaders to the wishes of those in office today. The only maglev project in development in Maryland is a private entity seeking no state funds. If any future request for state funding should arise, whether to allocate funds is the debate that should occur and a decision that should be made by officials present at that time through the normal robust appropriations process, not by the leaders of years past. This legislation does nothing more than rob future legislators, governors, and state employees of their decision-making authority on how to best operate state government into the future. Speaking globally, transportation is a high priority for Marylanders, as it is for our new elected governor. The opening paragraph of Governor Moore's transportation issues page reads as follows, quote, Maryland has a rich history as a transportation innovator. We were home to America's first railroad. Maryland has historically recognized the value of transportation not only as a means of mobility, but as an economic engine and as a vehicle for helping people lift themselves from poverty, end quote. This legislation signals that Maryland is closed to transportation innovation. It says if you want to solve big problems, you should go somewhere else. Why should the home of the first railroad not continue to lead in this field? As we plan Maryland's transportation future, we should not be limiting our options, but leaving the future open to a wide array of transportation possibilities that the governor agrees act as vehicles for economic mobility. There are a lot of questions about how tomorrow's Marylanders will move. I ask you just one question. The governor's transportation plan is titled Maryland's Mobility, Moving into the Future. Does this legislation move anything into the future? Thank you.
Thank you. It appears that that's all the people who were testified against the bill. So we have some questions. The first will go to Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question of the gentleman representing the company that wants to build the maglev. What kind of crew would be on this train? Would it have 2 people on the train? As a crew on the train?
That remains to be determined, Delegate. There is no driver, if that's what you're asking about. The train is controlled automatically.
Okay, so
there is a crew. The system in Japan does employ a crew on board the train. The requirements for a crew in the United States, I think, would be determined based on discussions with the Federal Railroad Administration, taking into account unique U.S. concerns related to safety, emergency evacuation, and similar type matters.
Thank you very much.
Before I recognize the next witness, will any freight be traveling on the maglev line?
No, Chair Barve. The current concept is for the maglev line to be a purely passenger rail system, not a freight system.
Okay. Next question goes to Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is also for the gentleman representing maglev. 2 questions, if I might, Mr. Chair, if I can take 2 bites at the apple. First question, has the federal government had any issues with proposed alignments of the maglev with respect to it being located near certain military bases? Any of the proposed alignments that have been suggested?
As you may know, the draft environmental impact statement was released. The public, as well as government agencies, had an opportunity to comment on that. Those comments have been shared directly with the Federal Railroad Administration, not with our company. We are at arm's length from the EIS process, so I could not comment on what specific materials they've submitted to the FRA on the draft EIS alignments.
Okay. Well, I had the opportunity to work at the MTA in a previous life, and so I've seen some of these alignments before, and the federal government has absolutely raised concerns with respect to its proximity to Fort Meade and some other security-sensitive installations. So that's my first question there to you. My next question is, because of those concerns and because of the alignment having to be changed because of those installations, doesn't it in fact make the route less direct, also bringing down the potential top speed of the maglev because it's not able to have the most direct route from Washington to Baltimore?
To your first point, I'm not aware of any changes being made to the alignment based on concerns expressed by any of the agencies you referenced. The top speed of the maglev is not impacted by the alignment. It's been meticulously designed so that we are able to achieve the top speed of 311 miles per hour. In other words, there's not a slowdown to account for curvatures.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question for Mr. Rainey. I'm sorry we're all coming at you. It's fine. You mentioned that and I think this is something you mentioned. I also noticed it in several of the written testimony, the unfavorable written testimony, that the project as it currently stands does not have any appropriated state funding and does not need any appropriate state funding.
That's correct, yes.
So if that's the case, then why oppose this bill? Like, under what circumstances could you think that, under what circumstances would you expect there to suddenly be a need for state funding if you don't need any currently?
I wouldn't anticipate a sudden need for state funding, but as I mentioned in my testimony, it's, I think, a bill that creates a great risk of unintended consequences. For example, one could easily imagine a situation where when the maglev is built, the state deems that it would be to the state's benefit to, for example, create a parking lot somewhere or some kind of intermodal transfer facility. That would be in support of the maglev system, and yet the state would be precluded from doing that. I can also easily envision a scenario in the future after the Baltimore-Washington maglev is built, when the system is being extended north, the state may conclude that it's very much in the state's interests to support the maglev project. But this bill, HB 106, would preclude any kind of consideration being given to that. And I think one might say, well, then the law could be repealed in that case. Well, when we're talking about multi-billion-dollar projects and repealing laws, that that can be a multi-year process that can add hundreds of million dollars of cost and great inconvenience to the traveling public. So that's why we oppose this bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, speaking of north, I mean, the ultimate plan is for maglev to link Washington, D.C. and New York, correct?
That's absolutely correct, Chairman.
And roughly speaking, how much time would it take for me to go from Washington to New York if it happened during the course of my life and I didn't drop dead in the meantime?
You would get from Washington, D.C. to New York City in under 1 hour, Chairman, and from Baltimore to New York City in about 45 minutes or so.
And that would be to the center of the city, hopefully.
Yes, that is our concept.
Okay. Any ideas on going to Boston?
We actually always, in our kind of promotional materials, always indicate that in the longer term, we are very much considering a future extension to Boston, but I would say the parameters of our current vision are DC to New York City.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, there appear to be no further questions. Thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 106. We now have two bills from the Prince George's County delegation, and I've been asked to take 435 first. So the delightful Chris Valderrama will present that bill. Okay, 435, there we go. All right, Chris, you've got 4 minutes. Welcome back to the committee. Always great to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, the magnificent Kumar Barve. And Vice Chair Dana Stein, my good old classmate, came in together, and esteemed members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, Chris
Environment and Transportation.
I was doing good until then. What can I say? Kumar got me all flustered. He has that way with women. In a good way, in a good way. Okay, let's try this again for the record. Chris Balderrama here, for the record, to present HB 435, Prince George's County Speed Camera Monitoring Systems. I know there's quite a few new members on this committee, so I wanted to start off with this piece of legislation first so you understood the necessity and the urgency for the two pieces of legislation. So having said that, last time this particular legislation was introduced by myself, it was by way, I wanted to outline some of the history. So Route 210, if any of you are familiar with this road, it's located in my district, but Charles County, it also interconnects with Charles County. Route 210 was never designed initially to be the major commuter road that it is today. It was originally built during World War II. It connects to the capital, Washington, D.C., to Indian Head Proving Ground. And in the mid-50s, the road was transferred from federal to state control, and then Maryland Route 210 came to be. So over time, housing subdivisions, shopping centers, churches, our everyday needs, schools, and recreational facilities were built as the area population increased. And because of this development, citizens in my district use Route 10 as their quote-unquote main street, where they go, with their daily lives. And so the Prince George's portion of Route 210 runs 14.4 miles from the Charles County line to the DC line. And the road changes from a 4-lane divided highway to a 6-lane divided highway with a speed limit on this road is about 55 miles per hour. But what is unusual about this road is that approximately 80 people now have been killed on the 14.4-mile stretch of Route 210 since '07, leading the news media to call it the Highway of Death. And many of you incumbent members here have heard that. So last year alone, 10 people were killed, and serious accidents were and continue to be a daily occurrence. And one of the most recent was a construction worker on Route 10, doing his job and getting hit and killed. And so all the members here, I'd like you to think about that for a moment and let it really sink in and visualize the hundreds of miles of state roads in our state. And last year's death toll on our Maryland roads, including our major highways like Route 270 and Route 50, was 514 people. By comparison, there were 10 deaths on this short 14.4-mile segment of Route 210. So as you may suspect, besides the unusually high death toll, there are serious speeding issues, which is the whole reason I even brought the initial legislation several years ago. The speeding issue that's endangering the health and lives of more and more law-abiding citizens. In the 7-month period between April and October of 2022, over 600 individual vehicles were clocked going over 90 miles per hour. That is 35 miles an hour over the legal speed limit. And to keep in mind, this is occurring on a 4-lane, 6-lane divided highway with significant local traffic and people just trying to catch the bus, get to the store, what have you. And this isn't even the worst of the speeding problem. One individual was clocked at 165 miles per hour on this road, while others exceeded 110. Why is this occurring? Clearly, there are some irresponsible drivers on the road, but no law enforcement. Why can't they put a stop to this excessive speed? So, as a result of a unique memo of understanding between the Maryland State Police and Prince George's Police Department that was executed back in 2000, Prince George's Police Department has primary responsibility for policing, even though it is a state road, though the Maryland State Police routinely patrolled Charles County portion. You explained that to me. So that merely provides backup on the Prince George's portion of the state road. Seeing that I have 5 seconds left, I will jump to say this legislation is simple. It asks for authorization for a total of 10 speed cameras along Prince George's of Route 10. It would grant Prince George's Police the discretion to set up a speed camera every 3 miles of the north and southbound lanes, and it will not mandate the use of all of them at once, although there may be times when it might be helpful to do so. So I have members here with me on the panel. Lots of them are part of the Route 10 210 Safety Committee, and every year, voluntarily, they commemorate or memorialize those who have died along Route 210, and each year the number of deaths are unknown. So what we do know is that all these deaths are unnecessary, and I'm here before you to plead for a favorable report on House Bill 435.
Okay, Who would like to go next? Please give us your name and then proceed.
We'll go with Major first. Go ahead, Major.
Chairman Barvey and delegates, I am Ron Weiss. I'm a member of the Maryland 210 Traffic Safety Committee and a frequent user of Maryland 210. I urge your favorable report for HB 435. Thanks to Delegate Valderrama and this committee, we have 3 speed cameras on 210, and they have been effective in slowing most drivers down. Speed camera citations showed a dramatic drop after they started operation as responsible drivers get the message to slow down. Of the 8.5 million vehicles counted by the cameras from April through November 2022, 21,403 of them were subject to citation. That means only 1/4% of the traffic was driving at 12 miles an hour or more over the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit at the cameras. But the halo effect of the cameras is limited. Drivers know where the cameras are located, and they slow down to avoid a citation. With 3 cameras spread over the 13 southbound miles and 13 northbound miles below the Beltway, 10 people have died on that road. So it's clearly insufficient. While most people slow down, as Delegate Valderrama indicated, irresponsible drivers do not. Our police are stretched thin in protecting us from homicides, carjackings, and property crime. Their first priority is responding to 911 calls. They patrol 210 when they have some time between calls for service, and we don't have state police enforcement. So our cameras are our only prime line of defense against speeding, but 3 cameras are clearly not enough to do the job. Please support HB 435 so we can use 10 speed cameras on 210 to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am Major Zachary O'Lear. I am from Prince George's County Police Department, and on behalf of Chief of Police Malik Aziz, we would like to offer our support in favor of this bill. For many years, Maryland 210 Indian Head Highway has served as a primary artery for motorists in Charles and Prince George's County to access the D.C. metropolitan area. Upwards of 80,000 motorists use the roadway daily to travel in and around the capital region. In 2018-2019, legislation was passed authorizing the use of 3 speed monitoring systems along Maryland 210. Since the implementation of speed monitoring systems in 2019, the portion of Indian Head Highway which falls inside of Prince George's County borders has still seen a total of 23 fatal collisions, 15 of which involve pedestrians. Through heavy enforcement by patrol officers, special assignments funded by overtime, and joint operations with the Maryland State Police, Prince George's County Police Department has invested massive resources into making this roadway safer. The speed monitoring systems currently in use have shown a demonstrable effect in reducing speeding on the highways. However, despite the current speed monitoring systems, coupled with the best efforts of the Prince George's County Police Department and their increased enforcement, this deadly stretch of Maryland 210 is still averaging approximately 6 fatalities a year. Please help us to curb the dangerous driving and potentially avoid additional tragic deaths by allowing the ability to place an additional 7 speed monitoring systems along this dangerous stretch of roadway. The passage of House Bill 435 would provide additional tools for law enforcement to use to improve traffic safety and help protect the many motorists and pedestrians who travel along Maryland 210. For these reasons, the Office of the County Executive supports House Bill 435 and asks for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. And I presume you're Reverend Robert Screen?
That is correct. Thank you so much, Chairman Barvey and members of this esteemed committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. I want to first of all put something in context, is that all of the cameras that we have, the 3 that we have, that is, will sunset this year if we do not get this bill passed. So I wanted to just preference that before I get into my presentation before you. Behind every data point given regarding traffic fatalities occurring on Maryland 210 Indian Head Highway, there is a human being connected to family, friends, neighbors, and community. Their loss creates a vacuum, never to be filled again by their unique creation that so easily is forgotten overlooked, and batched together in this number-crunching society we live in. And unfortunately, in hearings such as this, the personal value of their lives gets tossed into the impersonal, agenda-driven language, 2 minutes time limits for speaking, and a host of other components that govern the day of Annapolis bill jockeying. I would like to take this time to read to you in memorial memory the names of 7 of the 10 individuals that lost their lives last year on Maryland 210 Indy Head Highway, that we all remember what this bill truly is all about, the saving and value of human life. 53-year-old Antoine Manassa, 39-year-old Brandon Harris, 56-year-old Brendan Hackett, 31-year-old Khalid Hayenu, 56-year-old Huerta Melendez, 33-year-old Tiffany Bunch, 33-year-old Caitlin Rodriguez. Unable to ascertain the 3 remaining of the 10, I pray that each and all may rest in peace, and may their lives be not lost in vain by the failure to pass this bill that would increase the number of other lost souls lost in the fatal accidents on the Indy Head Highway. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Is Mr. Becker here? Oh, virtual. Okay.
I am here.
Great. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish to identify myself as John Becker, a member of the Maryland Coalition for Roadway Safety, and a citizen of downtown Rockville, Maryland. I want to thank the 210 Traffic Safety Committee for their hard work and support, and also the Prince George's County delegation in providing this, submitting this bill for consideration and a favorable report by the committee. This legislation shall allow other counties and other locations to increase their ability to go ahead and monitor speeding and traffic violations. It is very important that we continue this thing, and it should not sunset. The work that this committee has done, along with their delegation from Prince George's County, is very important to continue this work. Reducing the traffic deaths, increasing the safety applies to all of us, whether you live on Route 210 or up where I live on the north side of the Beltway. It is important that this continue and expand to everywhere throughout the state of Maryland. In conclusion, I want to thank the support staff for this committee for allowing me to testify today virtually. And I wish to thank the chair, the vice chair, the committee members, the Prince George's County delegation, and the people from the Route 210 Traffic Committee for testifying in support of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You also have Mr. Herbert Jones testifying virtually.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, committee members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Herbert Jones. I'm president of the Italian North Area Civic Association. Our association, our association represents over 500 homeowners and residents. We wholeheartedly support HB 435. I'd like to thank the 210 Task Force, Delegate Ramos, and others who have continued in the advocacy for the safety of the residents and motorists that use 210. We feel and we hope that the committee reports out positively on this bill. We believe this bill represents the public interest and the public good and adds to the overall quality of life of the residents in our area. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. That completes my comments.
Thank you. We also have Tamara Brown, virtual.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, and thank you so much to the chairman and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Tamara Davis Brown, a resident of Clinton, Maryland.
Uh-oh.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to personally thank my Delegate Chris Valderrama for bringing this bill. I also am a member of the Maryland 210 Traffic Safety Committee. And as my fellow members who are present with you have spoken, just wanted to reiterate, bring out just 2 additional points again. Without today's legislation, the 3 current traffic cameras that we have on 210 will sunset in September of this year. So that's the first important reason, but you may wonder why we want so many additional cameras. At a certain point on 210, there are no traffic lights where drivers have to actually stop. And it has been a perfect place for drag racing. And in fact, in 2008, people were literally drag racing along 210, and people would come out, sit along the side of the road to watch the show, to watch the exact drag race. Well, unfortunately, in 2008, one driver lost control and killed 8 of those onlookers. And so that particular stretch is just straight highway. And so we really need to we need more cameras. The 10 are necessary because we need more cameras to cover that straightway of roadway and to prevent something like drag racing occurring again. And that's the reason that we request the additional cameras. So thank you for your consideration, and we would like for you to vote this bill favorably out of your committee.
Thank you very much. We do have a few questions for the proponents. First goes to Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a question. The fines that are assessed as related to these speed cameras are going to be utilized a little bit differently than what most fines for speed cameras are used for. Isn't that so? And can you tell us what that is? For example, we've understood that the highway of 210 is significantly straight, and it allows for the speeding. And I think that this committee in previous years has required that the fines be directed towards the design and infrastructure of Route 210. Isn't that so?
Yes, that's correct. That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Notice how I walk in the room and then all of a sudden he feels the need to turn it into a question. Okay, next question goes to Delegate Ciliberti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of reference. You had mentioned, and it's perhaps minutia, an automobile that was clocked at 165 miles an hour. You happen to know the make and model of that car?
I think the Reverend does. I'm not quite sure. I thought the same thing.
Well, actually, the speed was 168 miles an hour. And,
sorry about that.
Yeah, well, that's okay. And that was not just a freak occurrence. In the month of April, that occurred. In the month of June, May and June, they were like 161, 162 is high speeds. That is not unusual. 140 and above is not unusual. It's a part of the makeup and the culture of the reasons why we're here, to try to get these cameras, more of them in the higher speeds.
But would you happen to know the make and model of that 165 rocket?
I would say it was called the Blur.
All right. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Valderrama, for bringing us this bill. I missed the first maybe 30 seconds or so of your testimony. Did you bring up the fact that this law is set to expire this year and that we have to do, well, if we want to continue some speed monitoring along 210, we have to do something?
Reverend Screen mentioned it, as I did not in mine.
Okay.
Because I was watching the clock.
Okay,
So
sure.
I wanted to hit all but that is an important point, which he did.
Okay, thank you. I missed that. Okay. So my other question is, with the three cameras now and looking forward, if we approve 3 again or 5 or 10, do these cameras get moved around periodically? Are they in the same place? Do we need to allow for them to be moved? What is the policy now?
So for the new members, sake, history will show that my second time coming before this esteemed committee, I asked for 3 roving cameras just so that these offenders wouldn't know where they were. Truth be told, I'm not sure if they were truly being moved around, but given, I would defer to the subcommittee here, Madam Chair Love, as to what you feel would be pertinent in doing so. If I really had my way, I would want the 10 cameras and they just all, in certain pockets, and 3 of that 10 would be roving. That would be my ideal wish, but I know how, things work up in Annapolis, but just reaching out to each and every one of you, the extent and the urgency. What I didn't mention was I honestly believe this is emergency legislation, but I did not introduce it as such. So with that said.
Mr. Chair, can our committee staff answer that question? Do we have to specify that in the law if they can be moved, or is that at the discretion?
Well, in prior bills, we have said that they had to be stationaries. I think we did, or you know what? I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Patrick, do you have an answer for that? Hold on. There we go. Whoops. Hold on.
We could require. I'm looking at Prince George's for Indian Highway.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Weiss has just told me it does not specify.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Next question goes to Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Delegate, just to follow up to Delegate Lehman's question about it does sunset September 30th. And I remember, when we passed 1-speed camera in 18 and 3 and 19, that was, it's a kind of a hard sell here.
Well, go ahead.
So is there a bill to go beyond the sunset for 3, or is this all or nothing to 10?
So the one that you mentioned, that is accurate, but when the 3 came in, the 1 was removed, which left us with only 3, and then there was construction on 210, there were 2, that was not part of my legislation, that was just there because of the road work that was occurring, but when project was completed, those were gone. So the initial 1 is no longer there, it's just the 3, and that will sunset at the timeline that you have, and which would leave us with 0, which is why, but we think we know we've proven the absolute need for cameras. So my ask is for 10, and I will leave it to the subcommittee to decide on what you find best.
So the question is 10 or nothing is really
No, I'm asking for 10, but I know how the ways of Annapolis works, and so I'm trying to start with what I believe is a reasonable number and hope that the subcommittee will work with me on keeping close to that number.
Thank you.
Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all talk a little bit? I want to build off of Delegate Holmes's question. What has been done with the money from the speed cameras and in general to reconfigure this road to make it safer?
Delegate, my understanding that the monies are going into the State Highway Administration for infrastructure improvement, as I think it was brought out earlier. Has there been infrastructure improvement as thus far with these monies? Not that I have known, or it's been brought to my attention that it has been. Originally, the money was supposed to be going to the criminal victims fund. I think you probably have that in part of your legislative record. But the Indian Head Highway does need improvement in many other areas, infrastructure-wise, and so the money would be well spent in that area.
So has anything been done to reconfigure the infrastructure of that road?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, if I could answer that.
Yes.
Yes, the road hasn't been straightened, but we have received much better lighting, much better pavement marking. They've narrowed the areas leading to intersections to slow people down, to avoid them using the shoulders to jump around backed up traffic. State Highway has done a lot to improve 210. Whether they've used this money or not, I don't know. But we have seen significant improvements of 210 infrastructure.
Okay, so SHA has done some work on the infrastructure?
ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so then my next question is, have there been considerations of other things, you know, someone mentioned stoplights, other ways to calm traffic down in addition to just asking for more cameras?
Well, I know that our state highway engineer is actively studying that. They don't have a recommendation yet, but they've talked about things like pedestrian overpasses, for example, because many of our, as Reverend Scream mentioned, many of our fatalities are pedestrians, and it's just not a good, safe place for pedestrians to be on.
Right, it just sounds like there's a real structural problem with this road, and increasing cameras is one approach to it, but it sounds like there also needs to be some serious infrastructure work on this road to calm the traffic. So that's what I'm trying to understand more.
If I may respond to something, I think this in the ballpark of where you're going with your question. One of the unique things about Indiana Highway, and it's hard to explain to others who don't live in this type of environment, but when you go through, if any one of you would go through the area of Fort Washington alone, what you will see on both sides of the shoulders are flex poles that are all along the shoulders. They're there to keep people from riding down the shoulders as a regular lane in hyperspeed. That is one of the areas of which they're building up flex posts pretty much all the way. It almost looks like an armed camp to go through this area of Indiana Highway, because the recklessness, just pure disregard for law, is just that pervasive. And so we putting up things to keep people, if you go into an intersection, flex poles are there to keep people from jumping from one side of the intersection to jump in front of the person at the light to get in front of them to go on the other side. Things of that nature. They're having to put, I think outside of the flex poles, they're going to be putting out extensions of the median to keep that type of thing from happening. We're in a crisis situation and have been for some time. And it's hard to, if in your neighborhood, if you don't have these types of things, I would just say this. In 45 years of living in this area, in the Indian Head Highway community, I've seen the deterioration of this type of driving. I used to work for UPS, and I've been very aware of many areas in the Washington metropolitan area. If it hasn't happened to you yet with the speeding, the recklessness, it's on the way.
No, I hear you. I just, I'm hoping to take that SHA is taking this seriously and addressing it on a multi-pronged way, because it sounds like there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make this safer.
They have changed an intersection to an interchange, for example, and there's plans to do additional ones.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair has a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate and proponents want to make sure I've got the highway distance information correct. I think someone mentioned 14.4 miles. That's the length?
14.4 north and south, so total 28 north and southbound.
So total of 28.8 miles of the highway in Prince George's County.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's north and southbound.
Yeah,
but
north
it's only
and south.
14.4 is the length of the span, the entire span. All of this is happening in 14.4
Okay.
miles.
Great, thank you.
There's a median between the north and southbound lanes, correct? It's
Yes.
a pretty
Correct.
wide median too, so it's
Yes.
like two one-way roads in a way.
Yes.
Yes.
We've got Delegate Baker as a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for presenting the bill and the information. The testimony is quite touching. In addition to the speed cameras, has there any consideration been placed on putting big neon blinking lights at the start of the speed cameras stating 14 miles of speed cameras, also having them in the middle, 7 miles in? I'm not familiar with the highway. Right. May not be possible. I don't know the congestion along there, but I think if it's about saving lives, yes, about getting your citizens to slow down, in addition to the speed cameras, they need more than just a little sign.
That's right.
Stating speed cameras ahead. So,
Well, quite frankly, the question was asked about monies going into infrastructure. That is one of the areas that State Highway has put it in a couple of areas. They need more, unfortunately. We do need more. But in the area where I live in Akakeek, the blinking lights are there, and actually approaching to Akakeek, coming out of Fort Washington, there's another set. But we do need more of those type of blinking lights.
I mean, I know when I travel out in the rural areas,
Yes.
I see big flashing lights, it gets my attention.
Right.
And I think that would be an important addition, rather than just trying to fine everybody for going down the highway. Ultimately, you want people to follow the laws and drive the speed limit.
I welcome that suggestion.
Thank you, dear.
Any further questions for the witness? Oh, only people are in favor of the bill. There's no opponents. Okay, that ends the public hearing on House Bill 435. Let's proceed now to House Bill 411. Delegate Valderrama.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, esteemed members, once again, Chris Valderrama here, now to present House Bill 431, which really is interconnected with 435. It's regarding the speed monitoring systems on 210 penalties. So this last hearing we just had, I testified that there's a serious problem with speeding and with recidivism on 210. So I think we can all agree that a $40 civil fee is not enough of an incentive for drivers to change their behavior. So what this bill seeks to remedy is to increase the penalties for drivers who drive excessively and for drivers who receive more than 2 violations in a period of 2 years. I would like you to keep in mind that Route 10, again, is six lane and sometimes 4-lane highway, which travels through a densely populated area. So under this bill, and I believe it's in your package, drivers traveling 67 to 76 miles per hour would be fined $40. 77 to 86 would be fined $90, 87 to 96, $160, 97 to 106 miles, $290, 107 miles would be $530. Recidivist speeders will also receive a surcharge in addition to the enhanced fines. So if someone were to offend a second time in 2 years, the penalty is an additional $50. A third in 2 years is $150. Fourth, $250. Fifth, $300, and a fifth offense in 2 years, $350. None of these penalties add points. They do not add points against your license. They do not require you to attend a driver's education class. They do not take away your license or impound your car, as is done in some jurisdictions, like Chicago, for an example. Moreover, the enhanced fines, they're not new. Across from us, the District of Columbia has long made no distinction between a ticket issued by a law enforcement officer or one issued from a speed camera. Tickets are issued for amounts from $50 to $500, depending on the speed and type of road. Those fines also double for non-payment. In Virginia, Fairfax County, and Connecticut, and New Haven, and even in New York City, have all adopted enhanced speeding fines, so we would not be setting precedent here. And finally, I know there are some members, not just in this committee, but in the Assembly, who are concerned about the authority of the legislature to set fines outside the statutory $40 civil penalty amount. This was brought up in our delegation. I seeked an AG opinion, and we are well within our authority. I was assured by the AG's office that this action that we are trying to implement is fully within the legislature's authority, and nothing in both bills, 431 or 435, raises any other legal issues. So for all the reasons I mentioned in 435 and now in 431, I respectfully request an urgent favorable report on both legislation, but on this especially 431. Thank you.
Before I recognize the other witnesses who are going to testify, just a quick question about this recidivism surcharge. If I drive through 3 cameras in the same day, would those be counted as repeats?
Major?
That's a very good question.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
That's a very good question.
I didn't think about it that way.
We might have to clarify.
Yeah, I think we might. I wasn't even thinking, like, well, good God, how do you drive, Mr. Chairman? Like, what?
I just have a fantastic imagination.
Yes.
Don't do it.
No, but in all seriousness, we would have to look into how that would.
Well, would it be our intention to do that? Let me ask it that way.
Well, my intention wasn't even thinking in that realm. I was really.
Give it some thought,
Yeah.
because, anyway.
No, absolutely.
Yep, all right, who'd like to go next?
somebody go.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Committee. I'll spare the 2 minutes of covering the same stuff. I just want to reiterate, this 14-mile stretch of highway is still experiencing approximately 6 fatalities a year. Since 2019, 23 fatalities again, even with all of the infrastructure changes and the help of State Highway and the 210 Committee putting in their volunteer efforts year after year, and the awareness that the police department and the 210 Committee has done on 210 with the enforcement, we're still seeing, the 6 fatalities a year. We do support the increase in civil penalties, as well as those who excessively speed. We do support the increase in fines. And then for those reasons, the county executive supports House Bill 431 and asks for a favorable support.
Okay, who'd like to go next? Reverend or?
I'd just like to remind everyone here that driving has always been a privilege. It is not a right. It's a privilege. And when we get our driver's license, each and every one of us had to pass a test. And that test involves staying within the speed limit. Somewhere along the line, we've gotten to the point where we feel driving at whatever speed we want to is an entitlement. And here's the bottom line. When you get into that and we end up losing control of the vehicle, then this is where we have the tragedies of the loss of human life. And this is, to me, this is what this is all about. It's maintaining the dignity and value of human life. I was a former chaplain for about 5 years in the local hospital there on the Indian Highway. I know what it's like to see the families come in, to see a lost one out of nowhere. That didn't have to happen. Every day that I go home, when I go home today, I go through the intersection where the 8 people were lost in February of 2008. The most people in one single accident happened on the Indian Highway, where there were 8 people killed, 9 people injured. I go through there every day. That did not have to happen. It happened as a result of racing. Someone felt the entitlement to be able to do that, and 8 people lost their lives. And so I put it in the human context because that's where it belongs. It's about saving lives, about putting cars back where they need to be under control and used by the law, for the law, and by law-abiding citizens. So I pray that you would think of it in that context. We lose the individual people in the context of throwing data points back and forth, statistics, this, that, and the other. These are human beings. I've seen too many of them for the loss of life. I would like to see no more if we can help that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Weiss.
Again, Chairman Barbee and the committee members, I'm Ron Weiss. I live in Fort Washington, and I'm here again today to urge your support of HB 431. I'm also urging Chairman Barbee not to test our speed cameras. And personally, I think if you blow through 3 speed cameras, you should get a surcharge. Of the 4 major roads I travel to testify here today, 210, 495, US 50, and Row Highway, 210 was by far the most dangerous. Thanks to this committee and Delegate Valderrama, the existing 210 speed cameras have been effective in slowing traffic down, according to our police friends. They've been effective with drivers who act their age and just needed a nudge, like Chairman Barbee, to slow down. They've been ineffective. The cameras have been ineffective with drivers who act younger than the age they were when they got their driver's license. This small percentage of the nearly 80,000 drivers who travel 210 on an average day drive at deadly speeds. In the 8-month period, April through November of 2022, 684 drivers were clocked at 90 miles an hour and above on 210. 320 of those drove at 100 miles and above. One of them has been mentioned, 168 miles an hour. These reckless drivers take advantage of the low $40 speed camera fine and the many stretches of 210 that they use as drag strips or racetracks. This bill targets those reckless drivers by increasing fines for higher speeds and multiple violations. I'd like everyone to know that the 210 speed cameras don't generate any income. It's the speeders who generate the income. Thank you.
For the record, I have never received a photo radar citation in my life. Okay, we have 3 virtual witnesses, Herbert Jones, John Becker, and Tamara Brown. So in that order, Herbert Jones, if you're with us, we'd love to hear. Okay.
Yes, yes, good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, committee members, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to associate myself with basically all the comments that have been made with respect to Bill HB 431 and the importance of changing culture and changing the behavior. I'll share a brief story with my 60 seconds left. I've lived in Virginia for about 15 years, and I had a young son. He was in his 20s, and he had a very heavy foot. And after 3 citations in Virginia for speeding, they temporarily took his license for 90 days. And that changed his whole demeanor about how he drove in Virginia. So this bill is part of from my point of view, a broader construct to begin to change the behavior of drivers so they understand driving is a privilege. And my son learned from that process. And when you don't have your license, it impacts your social, financial, all sort of impacts when you're not adhering to the laws of the state or that particular jurisdiction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. John Becker, are you with us? Hey, John.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me make a brief statement here. My name is John Becker. I live in Rockville, Maryland, in beautiful downtown Rockville, Maryland. And although I'm on the north side of the Beltway, I support the efforts of the Prince George's County community and the delegates and the Route 210 committee also in their efforts on this bill. And let me say a couple of things here as far as it is time to do the right thing. It is time to provide a favorable report on this bill so we can go ahead and create a safe environment for these people who live in this area to be able to go into their cars, travel down the road, and not get killed. And I'm not talking about spending millions to adjust and modify physically the roadway. There are certain things that have been done sufficiently with less costs on these monitoring systems to go ahead and do this. This information and this bill, which is being presented right now, needs to be passed with a favorable report. I want to thank the chair, the vice chair, the committee members, the Prince George's delegation, and the Route 210 community activists who are trying to do the right thing and fight the good fight. And for those of you on the delegation side who want to spend millions of dollars for physical renovations, modifications, when we have this device that can do the right thing, that's what we need to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tamara Brown.
Thank you again, Chairman, and to the members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Again, for the record, I'm Tamara Davis Brown of Clinton, Maryland, and a member of the 210 Maryland Transportation Committee. In light of the unseasonably warm weather that we're having here in Maryland, just wanted to point out that I'm hearing some motorcycles, I'm hearing some other things along my roadway of Winbrook, which happens to be an arterial road between Maryland 223 and another local Maryland road. And so if I'm hearing that here, I know that on 210, we're also going to be hearing some motorcycles along 210 as well. And as I testified previously, 210 not only has that straight flat road that can entice people to want to speed and drag race. What's also unique about 210 is that because it's a northwest corridor, people traverse 210 on the east side most of the establishment are residential, and on the west side it's commercial. And so one of the reasons that we have such high fatality, pedestrian fatality and bicycle fatalities are people literally trying to get from their home to the local grocery store, the dry cleaners, wherever they are doing their commercial activity. And so in order to prevent and make drivers aware and know that we're serious about the lives of people trying to just do some ordinary things that we do in our community, we think that hitting them in their pocketbook will get more attention and stop the recidivism that we have here. So once again, I encourage you to vote favorably for this bill and its companion bill. And as we said, the funds used will help to make some improvements along 210. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor or any of the witnesses who've testified? Okay, seeing none. Oh, wait, we have a Delegate Baker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you for presenting this important bill. I do have a question for the officer. Based on the speeds and the fines that are being proposed, what would those fines be if your officer was to pull someone over for speeds such as these?
I'm not really sure of the specific. I haven't been in a patrol capacity for quite some time, so I'm not.
Would it be possible to get some information?
I could answer for you. We based that structure on the manual that officers use when they do a traffic stop. And we took those numbers and we moved them over
So the
12
officers
miles.
would have a range of fines to those amounts based on those speeds?
We use those same numbers that in their fine book that's published by the court system.
I would be able to provide those.
I'd like to see that, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, there appear to be no further questions. Thank you very much. That concludes the public
Thank you,
hearing
Mr.
on
Chairman,
House
Mr.
Bill
Vice Chairman.
431. We will proceed to House Bill 652. Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I have a panel if they would like to come up. They can come up. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Barbie, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Regina T. Boyce, presenting HB 652, Vehicle Laws, Special and Commemorative Registration Plates, Maryland Heroes. Very simply, HB 652 creates a special commemorative plate that would feature the likeness of Maryland's two world-renowned famous heroes, Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. The plate will be created in collaboration between the MVA, the Motor Vehicle Administration, and the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. The surplus of the revenue generated from the purchase, registration, and renewal of these plates will be sent to the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, which serves, of course, to discovering, documenting, preserving, collecting, and promoting Maryland's rich African American heritage. I also want to put in a caveat that there is a companion bill that I believe it is in rules right now. We're going to blame the Senate. In the House side, that would is HB 1257. It's called the Special Vehicle Registration Plates, Chesapeake Bay Trust and Maryland Agricultural Education Foundation appropriation. Should either one of those plates lose funding due to the introduction of a third option of funding of this plate, the appropriation says that it would provide them with the appropriation less that they lose with the introduction of this plate. So with that, I thank you for your time and consideration, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. Who would like to speak first?
My name is Terrence Bailey. I'm the 5 times great nephew of Frederick Douglass, president of Operation Frederick Douglass on the Hill and the Bailey Gloche Family Foundation out of Talbot County, Maryland. myself and my cousins of FD5, Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives, hope for a favorable result from this hearing. See, I think it was 2020. We petitioned Governor Hogan to recognize Frederick Douglass either on his birthday or the day of his passing, because they're both in the same week. They came back with Civil Rights Heroes Day in 2021. They announced it on the 19th after 5 o'clock, so we didn't get to celebrate it at all. But we thank Governor Hogan. Governor Moore for bringing it back this year. And this bill here, we really appreciate it, because we can keep celebrating it by buying these plates to put on our vehicles. And we asked for that holiday because we wanted to start moving forward to actually try to get a state holiday for Frederick Douglass in the state of Maryland, and eventually a federal holiday. So we felt like these steps would be best taken here in Maryland, first. We were doing it as a family. And so we appreciate all the sponsors and all the lawmakers who are making this possible, for coming from the family, from the Bailey side and the Douglas side. And we thank everybody.
Thank you, sir. Who would like to go next?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman Barvey and Vice Chairman Stein. My name is Vince Leggett, the president and founder of the Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation. We wholeheartedly support this legislation to commemorate the legacies of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, images to be included as an option on the Maryland Heroes commemorative registration plates. The Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation count both Douglass and Tubman as bookends of the Chesapeake. They were born and reared on the Chesapeake Bay, and this license plate option would help bolster economic development and heritage tourism. In conclusion, we'd like to thank the forward-thinking Delegate Regina Boyce and all of the co-hosts and co-sponsors on both sides of the Chesapeake Bay. Whenever we see hands and hearts reaching across the bay, it encourages us all. Thank you for this opportunity to present this favorable testimony.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Barbey, Delegate Boyce, and distinguished members of this committee. My name is Douglas Mitchell. My great-great-great-grandfather was Harriet Tubman's father. I rise here today to join my friends and fellow family members, two of us direct descendants of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, in enthusiastic support of House Bill 652, the Maryland Heroes License Plate Bill. As vehicles proudly displaying the Maryland Heroes license plates inevitably propagate throughout the lower 48 United States, the indomitable and self-empowering values of freedom, equality, self-determination, and most of all, service to others that lay at the very heart of who Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman were, two of Maryland's finest heroes, will likewise be spread throughout this great nation, bringing honor and distinction not only to the historic state of Maryland, but also dispersing from sea to shining sea the aforementioned values of Douglass and Tubman, which today we all embrace and strive to defend and preserve. Frederick Douglass and my own great-great-grand-aunt Harriet Tubman literally devoted their entire lives to elevating and spreading these values to all Americans. And these proposed Maryland Heroes license plates that are the subject of House Bill 652 will support the elevation and dispersal of those values all across this broad nation in the most direct and effective manner. I thank you sincerely for receiving my voice today, but especially for following in the footsteps of our dear Aunt Harriet Tubman, and I do say our, and Frederick Douglass, in taking firm action to turn a wonderful idea into a living reality, just as they did.
Thank you. Is Lindra Marshall with us?
No, Director Marshall was busy today.
Okay. Are there any questions? I see Delegate Jacobs has a
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Chairman. It's good to see all of you up there, especially my good friend Vince Leggett. I haven't seen him for a couple of years, and good to see you're still around and kicking. But I'm just wondering, Delegate, have you talked about this being like the default Maryland plate? I don't know if that's the right terminology.
Do you mean
like if you just bought ordered tags, the tags that would come, like they had the bicentennial tags for a while, and now they have the one with
right?
the
So
Maryland flag on it.
there's been a discussion about, I guess, a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was O'Malley, Governor O'Malley had a regular commemorative plate. It's a plate that, you know, when you potentially get that if that's what you wanted. And then every governor after that has done one or not done one. And so I think with this administration, they weren't going to do one, because if they were, we were going to suggest this. But I don't think they're going to, I don't think they have, they've got other bigger things to do. So this is not like on their priority to kind of create that tag like other administrations have done. And so that was an idea. But again, we could leave that, I mean, the subcommittee could determine what they thought was best.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so that I'm clear, you're talking about one plate featuring both.
Well, that would be up to the between the MVA and the commission to figure out.
So it could be two different plates.
Maybe, or it could be one with the both likeness. That will be left up for them to design.
Okay, thank you. And one more follow-up question, if I could. And actually, I don't have a follow-up question. Thank you. That's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
There appear to be no further questions. Thank you very much for
Thank
being here and testifying on the bill. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Delegate Holmes, and Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you.
Okay. Let's proceed then to House Bill 659, Delegate Ernst.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Delegate Steve Ernst for the record. It's a pleasure to be in front of you. We just had a couple of you all over in our hearings. It was good seeing them. Today I have for you what we call HB 659. It's a Chesapeake Bay Bridge prohibition on trailers and contraflow lane study. I don't know if you all are aware of when we do have problems on that bridge when we're trying to get over there with the traffic and the design of it and what have you. One of the biggest things that causes the problem are these trailers, people with utility trailers, tractor trailers. They'll sometimes get in the left-hand lane, and during contraflow, they'll make the mistake of getting to the far left because they think they can get over there quicker. And the information we have indicates that the vast majority of deaths that happen when we do have an accident is because they're in that left lane and they're moving over there with two lanes coming at you. For some reason, when you have that dynamic, it creates a problem and people swerve and get hit, and that's what we're doing. What we've done is we've met with them as Queen Anne's County, and I got some support here from Anne Arundel also, is to try to get them to do a study. We had a hope that they could do something as simple as put cameras on while they're taking your tolls right now. They already can see our plates, but they don't have the technology to turn that into so they could send a fine to that. People are going across that bridge and we don't have the manpower to effectively police that, so these things are happening far more than we want. And when we asked the department, they said, well, there's no money, it's going to cost money, and I said, that's okay. But what we really want you to do is to do a comprehensive study on how we can make that bridge safer. We've had some major successes over the years with the lanes being changed and how we have the gates that go up right now. That's a safety thing. And the contraflow becomes an issue with a little bit of wind and what have you. So that's all made some things better, but we're really looking to try to make that bridge as good as we possibly can for the time that we have to live with it with just 5 lanes. So I got commissioners from Queen Anne's County have signed a letter of support and delegation support along. I do have a letter from MDTA stating that they kind of like it, but they don't like it because it's going to cost them money, require some work. But they've been very cooperative. So the bill as amended is just asking for a study. I look for a favorable report and will answer any questions I can.
All right, we have a virtual witness, James Moran from Queen Anne's County. Mr. Moran, are you with us? He what? Not in the meeting. Okay, are there any questions for the sponsor? I don't see any questions, so I have a question, Delegate. So I'm looking at the MDOT letter, and I only very briefly read it, and they're saying that the left two lanes in the eastbound US 50 approaching the Bay Bridge are currently restricted for vehicles over 5 tons, meaning that the contraflow lane is already restricted for tractor trailers and most vehicles with a trailer. And they're going on to say that when these vehicles don't comply, they are in violation, resulting in a $90 fine and a point on their license. So it seems like it's already illegal, or am I misreading the letter from MDOT?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. It's already illegal. However, we don't have the manpower to actually enforce these. I mean, if you look over the course of the last several years, and my studies ask them just go back 3 years, they have the ability to record your license plate right now. If you ever drive across, no matter what you're driving, they have that, but they don't seem to have the ability to take that information and say, you know, Delegate Steve Aarons was driving an 18-wheeler on the left side. They don't have that, and typically they have no way of saying, gee, somebody's over there, I got to get to them. So we're hoping that through this study, maybe they have another magical way of doing it. We're hoping through the study they'll be able to sit back and say it would be a benefit to everybody if we could put cameras in there that could actually look at these plates in that manner and segregate them out to say that this is now a punishable fine. And the fine needs to be a little bit more probably. I mean, people have died doing this. That's the biggest concern here. When you look at I think just a few years ago we had a family going across with a little utility trailer, and they didn't chain it down, and that trailer flipped off, and it went into the oncoming traffic, and the lady passed away, died from it. So I'm not necessarily looking for just one thing here. I'm looking for an overall study, because it is a problem when you go over there. You can't physically make these guys get into the right lane. They're doing just what you and I would do, trying to get across the bridge. If there's 2 lanes, they want to be across it as fast as possible.
So basically, the $90 fine isn't working.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, the 90 plus, I mean, they could probably, if they did their study, when they do it, they could see they have signage up there. There could potentially be more signage, which would be some lanes, you know, driving you in that direction, and a little bit better. We're looking for some help all the way over. We don't have all the answers. I'm just giving you a couple suggestions.
Okay. Any other questions for the sponsor of the bill? Seeing none, and no one's signed up in opposition, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 659. Let's go to House Bill 806, Delegate Chi. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to be back.
And if your folks can, they're coming up. Okay, great. All righty, start whenever.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and the distinguished members of the ENT Committee. It's great to be back. I'm Delegate Lily Chi, here to present HB 806. HB 806 deals with vehicle laws, but it really is in nature more like an economic development bill, because it removes a barrier for doing business for some of our businesses in Maryland. So HB 806 adjusts Maryland's vehicle laws to remove certain type of technology companies from the definition of a dealer in Maryland's statute. Okay. The reason is Maryland has several such technology companies, including one in my district in Clarksburg. They purchase commercial vehicles or industrial vehicles, and then they basically upgrade them and install automated technologies to make them autonomous vehicles. So by converting that, they sell it to customers, industrial consumer and the commercial customers. Just by doing that, they are considered dealers if they sell more than 3 in the 12-month period by Maryland law, okay? And with that delineation, they are also required to have all the trappings related to being a dealer, like a showroom, like a service center, like parking lots, and all of those things, which they are not, obviously, and they don't need to have. So all we are asking by this bill is that they are being exempt from being a dealer. They are really a technology company that converts commercial vehicles into autonomous vehicles. So that's basically all it does. And by removing that barrier, they can not only sell more vehicles and grow our tax base and economy and all of that, but also, their supply chain suppliers can also sell them more products. So it's a win-win for everyone. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Ashley, I don't think you've been in our committee for a while.
I haven't, Mr. Chairman. Good
Good to see you.
afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm Ashley Bagwell here this afternoon on behalf of RRAI in strong support of House Bill 806. Thank you to Delegate Chi for being a champion on this issue. I wanted just to mention a couple of things before I turn it over to Don Lefebvre, who is with RRAI. First, as Delegate Chi mentioned, and as is referenced in the department's letter, in crafting this bill, we tried to very narrowly tailor it so as to avoid any unintended consequences, because as Delegate Chi said, a company like RRAI never intended to be a dealer in the first place. The bill applies to commercial industrial vehicles only. There is a minimum weight limit for the vehicles included in the bill in language on the bottom of page 4. And in crafting the definitions, we relied heavily on definitions already in place at the federal level. And I think it's worth mentioning that this is an industry that's heavily regulated at the federal level. Before I turn it over to Mr. Lefebvre, I did want to reference amendment language that I think has been requested by the manufacturers. They did provide that amendment language to us. We are happy to cooperate with them and are just in the final stages of some wordsmithing on that amendment language. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude, and I'm happy to turn it over to Mr. Lefebvre, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Lefebvre.
Thank you, Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman Barbee, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the committee. My name is Don Lefebvre. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Affairs for RRAI. I'm here today in strong support of House Bill 806. I want to also thank Delegate Chi for her leadership and for introducing this bill. We proudly served as a technology partner with the Department of Defense for over 20 years. As we expand our commercial business, this legislation is a critical bill for RRAI and to serve our partners. I'll keep it brief. So if there are any questions, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
We do have a couple of questions. First goes to Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. So if I understand right, this is about people who take a regular commercial vehicle and convert it into an autonomous, more or less vehicle. And what safeguards are in place? I mean, I have concerns about autonomous vehicles generally, but now you're talking about somebody who's converting a vehicle. What kind of safeguards are in place to ensure safety?
Great question. Safety is paramount. It's the first thing that we always think of. We follow the traditional automotive process. There's a standard called ISO 26262, which much of the autonomy industry is following. So I won't bore you with all that goes into that, but we followed all the best practices from the automotive industry to have safety ratings on those, on all the vehicle parts. And our strategy as a company is to focus on slower vehicles in closed environments before expanding that out into on-road environments.
If the chair would indulge me, could you bore me a little bit and give me a little bit of the details?
Yeah, sure. All vehicles on road have to follow the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard, which is governed by NHTSA at the federal level. It sets performance standards for specific parts, systems, et cetera. So we have to, any vehicle that we make, or excuse me, that we integrate the technology into, has to still maintain that minimum standard that NHTSA requires.
Okay, and so, and do you also do software upgrades as software becomes, like, if you purchase a new vehicle with an autonomous system, there are software upgrades, and is that done also for converted vehicles, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Software upgrades, just like your iPhone, vehicles are becoming more akin to phones than standard vehicle. So yes, absolutely. You have to lock down code. It has to be well tested. But yes, there are over-the-air updates that will come as a result.
Okay, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Before I recognize the next question, how many employees do you have?
We have just over 300, Chairman.
Is your entire operation in Maryland, or do you have locations?
62% of our workforce is Marylanders, 68% live in the DMV area, and we have others in other states, just like most companies these days with hybrid working.
How long have you been in business?
21, founded in 2002, so 21 years.
Okay. Next question goes to Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sorry to be even more basic on this, but it's the technology that I don't understand what this is. If you could, I mean, not a lot of detail, but just, I don't understand, you're putting something on vehicles that make them
so if you
drive
see,
down the road themselves? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you, the vehicle that is on the screen right there, that is what we call a yard truck. It reverses trailers in warehouses, for example. We put on, we have developed code, algorithms that use sensors and computers to perform the driving task.
Okay. So this technology.
I just want to remind the members of this committee, this bill's intent is not to regulate this industry.
Right,
it is to
correct.
decide whether or not they are car dealers, basically.
That is correct. And
Okay.
if I, to add to that, Mr. Chairman and Delegate, this might be helpful. This is commercial industrial vehicles that are large, over 10,000 pounds or greater, and this is focusing on off-road use. And so we're not talking about a car that I might sell to you that might be equipped with autonomous technology. It's very specific to commercial industrial
So is this the
uses.
sort of thing you might expect to see at the Port of Baltimore?
I would say trucking terminals is probably a better
Okay.
example and more of a near-term use case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you took one of my questions, so I did want to clarify that, and I appreciate you doing that. So what, I guess the last question I have is, making this so that it's not a car dealer, what does that do for you? How does that help, or what standards are you no longer subject to?
So as Delegate Chi mentioned, there are lots of requirements that come along with being a regulated car dealer, like having a parking lot where you can have cars and people can come in and see them, a showroom requirement, signage requirement, things of that nature. And this is not what RRAI does. They take orders from customers and then based on those orders, automate the vehicles and then sell them. And so it doesn't make sense. And I think, I don't want to speak for the department. They submitted a letter of information, but in working with them during the interim, I think agreed they never intended to be a dealer. As Delegate Chi said, with the 3 cars over a 12-year period, they just get caught into that language.
Okay, thank you so much. That actually really was very helpful.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think it helps that the car dealers also agree that you're not car dealers. So, because they would want you to pay a fee to be in their organization, I'm sure, if you were. Any other questions for the sponsor or either of these witnesses? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 806. So let's proceed to House Bill 828. Delegate Smith, if she is here. And not if she is not here. Are you going to stand in for her, or do you want us to go to the next bill?
I'm going to figure out where she is. I'm with
Okay.
DOT.
All right. Okay, well, in that case, let's move to Delegate Moon, if he's here. No Moon. Goodbye, Moon. I guess we're going to wait for Delegate Smith. Yes, Ryan.
Mr. Chair, that's a fan favorite in my house right now,
I
that
bet.
book.
I bet. Huh? Delegate Smith, welcome back. Okay. Parking lot, towing or removal, parking lots, maximum fees. Okay.
I was rushing here. Let me breathe. Let me get it out.
That's good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and also distinguished members of this committee. For the record, Delegate Stephanie Smith, here to present House Bill 828 for your consideration. Though it's not noted in the system, it was entered at request of the City of Baltimore. And so this is really, truly a simple bill. You hear that proclamation often. It simply it just reconciles the existing statute with a recent AG opinion from last year that essentially just clarifies the fees that towing companies are permitted to request of a client, so that miscellaneous additional fees that are not exactly the tow fee expressly are not lumped in with that. So it's really just a reconciling of the statute with that opinion, and I know that we have representatives from the City of Baltimore that can give you further details, but I just want to say thank you for your time today. I think we all want people to have the most accurate billing, requests, and particularly when you're getting a tow, probably not one of the best days of your life. So thank you for your time and for your careful consideration of House Bill 828.
Call up Nina Themelis. Nina, you back there? I thought I saw her, but apparently not.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Liam Davis from City DOT. I'm representing City Administration.
Okay, go right ahead. What's Liam Davis? Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, for having us, and thank you, Delegate Smith, for introducing this really important, but yes, simple legislation. So just in summary, House Bill 828 provides clarification to local jurisdictions regarding the fees that tow companies can charge for trespass towing. By removing the referencing of total fees and amending the language to simply fee, House Bill 828 provides clear guidance to local jurisdictions and tow companies on what fee rates can be authorized. Based on the current iteration of the statute, the ability to double total fees has led to more ambiguity and less clarity for local governments, including Baltimore City. The ambiguity has at times resulted in fees submitted to the Baltimore City Trespass Tow Board in excess of the authorized doubling of municipal rates. Ultimately, the excessive fees can burden the citizens and visitors of Baltimore City, adding financial hardship in times of fiscal uncertainty. We ask that you also take into consideration a recent formal opinion submitted by the Maryland Attorney General, specifically Opinion 1070AG093, which states that total fees allowed to be doubled should only be the towing fee and not include storage, administrative, or other miscellaneous fees. Passing House Bill 828 would effectively codify this opinion and help to clarify authorized towing rates. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to discuss this legislation.
Is Isadora Stern here? Come on down. You're the next contestant.
No.
Okay.
Oh, there's one here. But good. Couldn't tell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Isadora Stern. I'm a policy manager with the Economic Action Maryland, formerly the Maryland Consumer Rights Coalition. We are a statewide nonprofit organization, and we work to support economic equity and justice in our low-income communities and communities of color across Maryland, and we do this through our direct service, our research, education, and advocacy. This is a clarifying bill. We think this lends transparency to our consumers. We think it's a good consumer protection bill. Getting your car towed is terrible, and a lot of folks rely on their car to get to jobs. We think that this will help reduce the costs of getting their car back, which will lower limits for low-income people who have a harder time meeting those fees than other folks in Maryland. So we think this is really crucial for our lowest income folks, and are very thankful for the delegate for introducing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a virtual witness, Ryan Dorsey, who's on the Baltimore City Council, I believe. Ryan, are you with us?
He's my constituent as well.
He's someplace.
I'm here. My video. Okay, now I can start my video.
Oh, here we go. All right, great.
Hello,
Welcome to
Mr.
the committee.
Chair.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. And I appreciate the city administration and Delegate Smith bringing this bill forward. And look, I just appreciate the succinct testimony of the bill sponsor here. I think that says it all, is that essentially this bill makes no change in law. This bill only makes the existing law more legible, more intelligible, easier to be understood. It happens that this statute, this section of the Transportation Code is really, really confusing and convoluted. It asserts 3 different ways in which a maximum fee can be set. 1, by local law, 2, by default at $250 if there isn't a local law to set it, and if the local jurisdiction does not itself perform towing from the street, for which they charge a normal fee, which can be doubled, and 3, to which this bill applies, in the case where a local jurisdiction does perform its own towing from the street, for which there is a fee that can then be doubled in order to establish a maximum fee for trespass towers, which is not towing from the street, but towing from private parking lots by contract with the property owner. It's a really, really crazy scheme that's laid out in this law, and I've been working for a number of years to get this law clarified, and very happy to have the administration in the city request the reference opinion from Attorney General Frosch that clarified the interpretation of this law, that total fees is just the fee for towing, which can be doubled, nothing else. I know that there are others who would like this to be interpreted differently, but this is the law as it is.
Okay. Any questions for the sponsor or any of the witnesses? This is a statewide bill, correct? Okay. Well, I don't see any questions, so we will go to the one opponent, also virtual, Charles Parrish, who signed up in opposition. Mr. Parrish? Oh, he's here personally. Oh, come on up. Oh, yeah, okay, in person. My mistake. Yeah. Give us your name and please proceed.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee. It's always a pleasure to be here. 17 years I've been coming, though. This is the first time I ever sent something written. Did it get through? Did it go in? Okay, all right, because I knew I wouldn't be able to say all that. I'm representing Vision Wrecker Service, which is a licensed, Baltimore City licensed trespass towing, known as private property towing, and also the legislative chairman for the Towing Recovery Professionals of Maryland. Been non-consensual per se throughout the state of Maryland for 3 decades now. I've always promoted the Baltimore City Tow Board, which I've worked with now for 3 decades as well, over 3 decades, as a symbol of how to do it right. towing, as it was mentioned, and I've always mentioned, nobody has towing in their budget. Nobody wakes up saying, I can't wait to see Charlie today. So that's, it's just not there. What we do for private property owners is a tool that this committee, actually, a Delegate Doyle Neiman led the charge in 2012 when it got passed in 2009, which is in my statement. They did a task force to try to get rid of the road towing throughout the state, and they took a Baltimore City, Baltimore County reg and made it statewide. The tow board is the place in Baltimore City where I would like to see this discussed. In 2013, Councilman Curran at the time, based on the AG's opinion that was referenced here, 2 times the towing plus the ordinary fee. And you can see on my chart, I don't want to rehash it all, but we are for caps, we are for regulations. This, though, is a statewide, this does not need to be addressed, and we ask for an unfavorable opinion and ask that the tow board handle this. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I have to admit that I've never been towed, and I think this is not a topic that I ever really thought about until I got, not yet. I never really thought about it until I got on this committee, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around this bill. So basically, there's a statute in Maryland law that limits what you can charge, what towing companies can charge consumers, right?
Correct.
And that current law basically says that for a local jurisdiction like Baltimore City, that they are capped at double the total fees for towing, right?
Total fees with the understanding, and we agree, speaking for me and the association, we agree with the AG that only the towing can be doubled. The fact is, Baltimore City, which stands alone in this, charges an ordinary fee minimum of $230 the second your car is towed.
Okay. And so my understanding is like the AG has said total fees basically is just the fee for towing, and you agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay. And so you do not think that basically towing companies should already be, for example, charging storage fees or administrative fees or any of that and then doubling those?
We agree that those should not be, and they are not.
Right.
With the understanding that in Baltimore City, and I could correct myself, there's a $220 minimum or a $230 minimum depending on east side and west side. Of those ordinary fees, $130 is towing, while $50 is storage, and $40 is a processing admin fee. So what we have done, and we did in 2013, was when that $350, to which if you doubled the $130 and then you did the $90, it came up to the $350. There was no storage fee charged for the first 48 hours, and then we charged $15 a day, the same as the city did. The reason for that was our hours of operation are nonstop. We never close. We're never allowed to. We must be manned. And on my chart, it shows the differences.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm still struggling with this. Okay. So you agree with the Attorney General's opinion, and this bill just codifies that, but you don't like the bill because the General Assembly is doing it and not the tow board. Is that right?
I don't like it because of the intentions of it, to which have already been attempted 3 times and denied by the local jurisdiction of Baltimore City, whether it was the tow board, the former mayor, or the recent committee. And in their own words, their attempt to change the wording is to attempt to decrease us less than what the city yard is charging, yet they're not required to do the same functions we are.
Okay. And so then, and so you are opposed to the intent, and the intent is to do what? Can you just repeat that?
As they stated in their bulletin.
To lower the cost.
To dramatically decrease. Dramatically decrease.
But the bill itself, even though that maybe their intent is to, I guess you're saying one day in the future, dramatically increase the cost on consumers, therefore decreasing your bottom line. But you're saying that is not done by the bill, because I mean, the fiscal note basically says there's no real change to anyone because this is how it already is pursuant to the AG's letter, right?
As I said, Baltimore City is the only one that total fees applies to. The rest of the state does theirs fair and reasonable as it's requested. Baltimore City's structure is set up differently, and that's why the last committee hearing that didn't allow it to go out of committee was having an issue with it as well. So this is now another attempt coming through the state side, even by changing that one word, to which many it wouldn't matter, but the intent of changing that word is the intent that they've already demonstrated that they want to do. That will hurt private property owners as well as the towers themselves. The consumers, the tow board controls what we do. They make the rules and regulations, as I've stated. All this is really going to is to attack the fees that are allowed to be charged to the consumer who's violating big signs that are posted on the properties and or the lease agreements, you know, such as abandoned vehicles, stash cars, cars with no tags. You know, these are all problems for property management. We're the tool they use to remove those vehicles.
Right.
And to be honest with you, a lot of those vehicles we don't get paid for anyway because we have to transfer them. We can't sell them. We're not like the city that can auction them off. We can't.
Okay.
We have to send them to an ADR.
So just one more question, Mr. Chairman, because I know other people have questions now, so I don't want to hog the time. But we did get a letter. I don't know. You probably have not read it because you don't have access to the floor system like we do. But we did get a letter from the Maryland Multi-Housing Association, MMHA, that they're concerned that the bill would potentially increase their costs, their housing costs, that they would then have to pass on to renters. Their concern is that this bill would essentially lower the fees that consumers are charged, put more burden on you, and that you would therefore have to charge the apartment building more, and that this would essentially flow down to renters. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, that's very true.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what I'm having a hard time understanding is I get what you're saying about the intent behind the legislation is, you know, somehow, you know, malevolent. But if you're what you're saying is consistent with the AG's opinion and consistent with the fiscal note, which is that actually no fees will increase or decrease based on codifying existing law, I'm having a hard time, if this doesn't actually change anything except for clear something up, I'm having a hard time understanding why anybody's housing costs would increase or why housing apartment building owners, their costs would increase if this bill doesn't actually increase any costs.
Under current law, and has always been law, the property owner is not allowed any remuneration from a tower.
Right, I saw that, yeah.
The signage that we provide, which is 24 inches by 30 inches, used to be metal signs, but of course of the drug activity and the cost of metal going up, we had to go to a PVC, PCP, PVC, whatever it is, plastic type sign. The minimum is 24 inches by 30 inches. Those signs cost, but they have our name and our information on them. So all the towers in the state, those signs, when we lose a contract or we get a contract, we install those. And then we remove them if the contract is canceled. That's a big fee. Those signs cost us anywhere from $18 per sign to $32 per sign minimum. And they're required at every entrance and exit and throughout the property for every 7,500 square feet. If Baltimore City was allowed to just charge the towing fee only, to which they're going to distinguish, remember, they're paying a tower $95, they're charging the consumer $130, and then they're throwing on top another $90 the second you walk in. Well, if we're only allowed to charge the towing fee that they decide to charge the consumer, because they'll dictate that, right now you would say it would be $260. We're not going to be able to afford to supply the signage. So we're then going to have to go back to our clients and say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to buy that signage. You're going to have to provide that signage. You're going to have to install it. And then the liability is on both of us. I'm then going to have to check to make sure. And if anybody ever saw my signs, I put a lot up.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello,
Great to
my
see you
friend.
again.
Good
How
to
you
see
doing?
you. Good to see you here, not on a bill that's mine.
Yes.
Anyway, my question is, I'm a little confused because in your written testimony, and I believe also in your oral testimony, you said that you want to leave this to the Baltimore City Towing Board to decide. But this is a statewide bill, so how does that work?
I was talking about the fee. If they want to cap the fee more than what it is now, That should be something, as it's been through the last 3 decades, the towers and the tow board, which has 4 representatives from the city, 1 from property management, 1 from the citizen at large, and then 1 representative from a tower. So there's only 1 tower out of 7 votes on the board. This open communication that we've had over the last 3 decades has been great. And we've been able to communicate. We've then worked down the numbers, even as recent. We've received an email asking us our costs so they can then determine. That's where it should be, so we can communicate.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, thanks. Well, but I'm confused because isn't that just for Baltimore City and not for the entire state?
If I'm not mistaken, nobody else in the state is complaining about the word total free.
Okay, because the bill does apply to the entire state.
Correct.
And I just don't understand sending this to the Baltimore Tow Board, how that then impacts the fees across the state.
The total fee only applied prior to 2012 to Baltimore City and Baltimore County. At that time, they've always set the fee. When the law changed to statewide, total fee stayed in case there was any other municipalities that had ordinary fees added in. Baltimore City is the only one that does. So when you're changing this or leaving it the same, only Baltimore City is actually applies to the words total fees.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to be clear about something you said earlier. You said all the other jurisdictions don't have this issue except for Baltimore City, which would make me believe that for some reason our city or the city or towers in the city have misinterpreted the law, thereby have been essentially being able to charge more for a misinterpretation of the law. Because if no one else is having the issue but us, and it seems like it's our misinterpretation of the law, potentially. And this is a correction to that.
In 2013, when Councilman Curran was going through the interpretations of what it was, even before Councilman Dorsey and the AG, sure, the 350 was established. It wasn't until Councilman Dorsey, who then took the position on the board, he was the first person at any given time in my 3 decades that ever allowed a tower, understanding total fees and not understanding that the board had the authority to set a maximum cap. And that's when it happened, and he's been trying to get it straight since then. And I love Councilman Dorsey, I'm not going to lie, he's done a lot for the towing. But on this subject here, the intent is what they're trying to do. The board has the authority to even go less than.
So why hasn't the board made the change of a misinterpretation of the law that apparently is the same everywhere else and yet unaffected in the way it affects Baltimore City?
Correct. Baltimore County doesn't do 2 times their police rate, which is set. Howard County doesn't, Montgomery, PG County. No other place in this state has a problem with the interpretation, except for Baltimore City because of the way they do their fee collecting from the consumer when they get their car towed.
I think you've made my point. Thank you.
Okay, I have to tell you, I completely do not understand this industry. I don't know who's being charged a fee. I don't know what a total is versus, and the floor system isn't working. So I'm going to end the public hearing here. I'm going to leave it to the subcommittee. I will learn this industry and figure out what we're going to do, but it's very hard when the floor system isn't working and the labyrinthine arguments behind who's being charged a fee. Can you answer that? I don't even know the answer to that.
The consumer, the trespasser, the violator, the person towed.
So I park in a place I'm not supposed to park. I get charged a fee.
Correct.
Okay. Do I get charged a fee for storage?
Well, in Baltimore City, you have to wait 48 hours if it's a private company. Elsewhere in the state...
So after 48 hours, I'd be charged storage.
In Anne Arundel County, it's the calendar day. Plus, you have to wait 12 hours. Howard County is 12 hours. Each jurisdiction has their own grace period before you're allowed to charge a storage fee.
So what is this double fee? What is this limit? What is that?
The total fee?
Yeah.
Well, up until recently, not by the towers. Of course, there's a need and there's a greed. The greed are not the towers that we're trying to represent here. The total fee was what was charged by the tower doing a municipality tow, without any extra labor, without any other, just the hookup and tow. Although in trespass towing, we don't have a person standing there, you don't have keys, you're not able to get into the vehicle, so you're using dollies, you're using other equipment to get this vehicle to move. It has always been our understanding that we didn't charge that. That's what the double was. That covered your double. The hours and the extra labor that would have been needed was always the understanding, including the task force, to which this committee and myself, I was there for that as a person, that's what the double was allowed for. That offset that cost that we would have.
So if we were to pass this bill, would it result in a difference between what you get charged based on being towed from a private lot versus a municipal lot?
It's going to charge what the private lots would be able to charge.
So it would make it the same?
Their attempt is to change the private sector. They're able to charge a fair and reasonable price. They're going to base it on what they determine that they're going to charge the consumer as part of a total fee.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to have to read up on all of this when the floor system is operational. So that concludes, thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on this very perplexing bill. We'll now go to House Bill 849, Delegate Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had some photos that I think my office sent
There we
along.
go.
Yeah, here we go.
There we go.
Great. All right, colleagues. House Bill 849 is a bill that reforms Maryland's school bus camera enforcement program. This is actually a very complicated topic, so I'm going to try to explain it as fast and clearly as possible. This bill came actually as a Montgomery County House delegation bill. It was supported unanimously by our pro-pedestrian safety delegation, and it became a statewide bill because it turns out we cannot change what these school bus camera tickets look like just in Montgomery County. That needs to be done for whatever counties have this program because of the district court uniform citation. So that's how we're here. So what does the bill do? It takes the law that authorizes local governments to issue automated camera tickets for passing by a school bus, and it adds two reforms. One, it creates a warning, a first violation warning instead of a fine in a very specific circumstance. And that is you have a multi-lane road over 4 lanes that has no median in it, and the driver was passing the school bus on the opposite side of the road. And we're going to get to why that is. And the second aspect of the bill requires State Highway to come up with a plan to look at the data about where these bus stop infractions are happening and where they are happening on multi-lane state highways that lack medians to try and do something other than the tickets. In other words, look at these engineering treatments as an alternative. So this bill is the first step to fixing what I would call a clunky and unaccountable program. I've been studying this for many years now. We've had multiple iterations. Montgomery County was fortunately or unfortunately the guinea pig pilot county for this program, starting with a small number of cameras affixed to some school buses, later growing that. And then when I first came down here, we had some hot mess debates about what the fine amount should be, because at least the top line was, oh, people are still passing the buses, the numbers are increasing, they're not getting the message. Let's now make it $250 in the hopes that that's going to do something. And I started to get suspicious when a few years into that program, Bethesda Magazine published an article listing some of the highest volume locations, and I took a look at it and I said, these are in my district. My nerdy Vision Zero district is the most scofflaw school bus drivers. So I took out satellite image, and you can see some of them. And if you could flip through maybe to the next one, I'm not sure who's got the, so these so it's very important to understand how the state law we wrote works. So number one, we are authorizing local governments to put these cameras on through private vendor. That vendor was convicted of bribery in another state and flagged by a DLS audit that Montgomery County's procurement was flawed and no bid and didn't have proper controls in there. And nevertheless, other counties are adopting this program sight unseen. So I think it's very important to understand what's going on here. Now, the way the state law operates and the way what I thought we were voting on when we issued a $250 ticket was, you're behind a school bus and you don't stop, you're a jerk. $250 ticket. That's what I thought was going on. But when I saw that these were the locations and pulled out the satellite image, I said, wait a second. And so I asked for data. In 2019, they refused to turn over data about where these infractions were going on. We had to pass a law last year, and I finally got data. Over 70% of these infractions are from these multi-lane state highways. It is not drivers behind the bus. And I have much more I can tell you about this. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, to make it very clear, in this photograph here, if there were a median strip down the middle of that road, there would not be a
There would be no $250 ticket if we put a median there. Now, here's the other thing. I tried to put in a bill saying, okay, can we at least take, because look at the data I sent you in the packet. You have bus stops, single bus stops in my district that are generating nearly $1 million in fines every single year, and that number is not going down. So there's a sucker driver that replaces every driver that gets this ticket, because these are high volume, 8-lane state highways that we chose not to pay for a median on, and these are mostly lower income roads. The county proposed a series of voluntary reforms, and it turns out they can't implement any of them. They can't engineer changes on state highways. So they take the money, and they're not going to fix the road, because they can't. The court, they said they were going to do the citations in a foreign language because so many of the locations where this confusing situation was happening were next to CASA's headquarters, is in the top 10 locations. And they can't because the district court doesn't do citations in a foreign language. The county school system said in 2019 they were going to look at moving the school bus stops off the main road. They refuse. And so it calls into question whether they actually think this is a dangerous condition warranting a $250 ticket. So I tried every single year to say, take the money and build the medians. No one will let me do that. The bill this year came in and it said, can we at least take the money that's generated from state highways and steer it back to fixing these dangerous school bus stops on state highways? And they didn't want to do that. So I'm here before you with this compromise, which is to have state highway begin to look at doing these engineering changes, and in the meantime, to give people the first offense off before we start issuing these tickets only in these confusing multi-lane highways.
Okay, we've got some questions. Delegate Healy goes first.
Yeah, I guess I want to go back. I'm flabbergasted by all of this, but when you talk to the school system about moving the bus stops, I thought there was something in state law where, you know, you put the bus stop on the side of the street so that kids don't have to cross the street. They can just get out of the bus and onto the sidewalk. Is that situation happening here or not?
I couldn't tell you if there's a state law prohibiting these bus stops, but what I can tell you is after the county said, wow, we've never had all these stakeholders at the same table together talking about this. They said over a number of years they were going to look, the bus coordinator was going to look at it, and because the evaluation only happens once every X amount of time, we had to wait. We waited, nothing happened, and they later came back and said it would be too inconvenient to move these bus stops off the main road, and that a number of factors are taken into consideration, including the convenience to the families, the availability of alternatives,
Okay.
things of that
Yeah,
nature.
I got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Moon, I promise, Mr. Chair, I have a question. My son just went through driver's ed, and he did not learn this. And the only reason I know this is because you brought it to us. So obviously we have a problem that there is a lack of education. So my first question to you is, have you spoken with State Highway about trying to educate drivers about this portion of the law?
So I think it's primarily the counties that seem to do education on this, and I know the county does, tweets and PSAs and all this stuff. But again, you got to ask yourself, what are the chances that those drivers right there on that road saw that one PSA? And if they were the ones next to the CASA headquarters, was it even in a language and form that they understand? The citation itself doesn't really explain this in a way that certainly that a foreign language person. So I highly question the education program that comes with what we've done with the law here.
Okay, and then my next question is, so do flex posts count, and what happens if there's like a gap, so you don't have the median, you have the median, then you don't have the median? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's all getting interpreted right now by a designated Montgomery County police officer who reviews the citations along with the event, just like with the other types of photo enforcement. But I asked questions about this. Is this valid or is this not valid when I got constituent complaints about very specific bus stops? And trying to run that back through the process and get a clear answer from someone, good luck. I mean, the county police are going to take very strict operation of the law and say, that's a valid ticket. But it's not a valid ticket in the very common understanding of whether, if there's a 6-foot gap because there's a turn break in the median, I don't know. But again, the volume of tickets that you're seeing here, again, on the same roads year after year would suggest a much better solution is if we start looking at re-engineering the roads. And sorry, I'll shut up after this. One of the number one locations in here, River Road, we had a Ukrainian, a foreign service official from the US come back to flee the war that was breaking out in Ukraine and take a bike ride in Bethesda and get killed at that location, where for years I had been suggesting we use the data to find locations where we should be making safety improvements instead. So this is literally costing lives, and this bill is pro-safety, despite what some of the negative testimony you might have read from people who have not even looked at the data.
Vice Chairman has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Delegate, I can understand your frustration and your motivation for this bill, which I think makes sense. But just to confirm, the requirement of issuing a warning for a first violation only applies to these circumstances. Otherwise, the jurisdiction can issue a ticket for a first violation.
And you can tweak that if you think we under or over included there. I think what's in the bill is a 4-lane multi-lane scenario, and it's a driver in the opposite direction. That was the scenario we tried to set up as let's start doing the warning at that break.
Okay, thank you.
So in this photograph, if I'm a driver behind the bus on the left side, from our view, the left side of the double yellow line, that's not the situation you want to have an effect on. It's the people on the opposite side of the double yellow line.
That red truck with the...
Got it. Okay. Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Moon, for this bill. I completely understand your frustration on this, having dealt with some similar issues in Howard County, but I was going to ask the same question as Delegate Love, but we call them ballards, I guess, like those flex posts. Is that unclear in the law? Like, is that something we need to clarify? Maybe not in this bill, but...
I think the operation of the tickets under current law refers to divided and undivided highways. I'll have to double check that. So the way the fines work is wrapped up in existing state definitions like that. That a divided highway, a driver on the opposing lane in a divided highway does not get a ticket, but on an undivided highway you do.
So it's what's a divided highway as part of the issue on at least?
Sure.
Okay.
You know, and whether you want to include flex posts or not, I don't know. I mean, just for your benefit, I included in the testimony packet a very recent report from New York City that looked at a variety of treatments and found that pedestrian islands, like what I'm trying to do here, were the #1 safety benefit for both drivers and pedestrians. And I say this because both the vendor and the county were trying to convince me for all these years to change nothing whatsoever about what's going on here. Leave the kids at these bus stops. Don't put that the median might make a more dangerous situation. So you should know the facts.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up. I'm shocked that there's bus stops there. And beyond the driving issue and the ticketing issue, I'm very concerned about kids who have bus stops there. I wonder if you have any safety data on that, and wonder if we should be looking at, for next year, perhaps.
This is the very simple but complicated political answer I will give you. My first inclination, looking at all the data, and said, my God, isn't the simplest thing to move the bus stops? And then I heard from parents who talked about how they didn't think this was dangerous and that none of the kids are ever crossing. They all live in that apartment, so they're not crossing. Why should they be penalized by having to move the stops? And I said, okay, that's fair. From that perspective, the most pro-public scenario would be to build the dang median on the road and let that be a walkable community where you can have a bus stop right there. Like that would be the correct answer, but getting there is so difficult.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we understand this situation. We do have somebody who signed up in opposition, Sarah Sample with Mako.
All right, thank you everyone for having me today. My name is Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties, and we are testifying here today in opposition of House Bill 849. So you've heard what this would require, which is to send a warning instead of a citation. Citations have an immediate effect. The recidivism rate is incredibly low when you're able to issue a citation. A warning, as you've heard in multiple bill hearings today, the warning doesn't have the same effect. Even a low fine doesn't have the same effect. And so this is a tool that is effective, and it's keeping these circumstances safe. In terms of the actual danger that is presented in these environments, it's not just about the kids crossing the street. It's not about the vehicle that passes and nothing happens. This is about, you have some cars that are stopping, you have the speed limits on those highways, and a car that is not stopping. And worst case scenario, they're swerving, they end up in the opposite lane and create an accident, or they have an accident. It hits the bus stop, it hits a kid, it hits the bus. That is what we're trying to protect from, not the fact that somebody goes through and just passes, or that no kids are crossing the street. So I just wanted to paint that picture a little bit for you. I also would say that there are a lot of solutions I think that we can look at in terms of these bus stops. I think, they've done a lot of study in Montgomery County. This is now a statewide bill, so maybe, having the study happen first so we can have good, accurate information on what is happening in the other counties could be positive. I think that the solution about potentially moving the bus stops is something that it's not just inconvenient, it's a little bit more complicated than that, and I can explain more about that if somebody wants to know. But there are other solutions that I think we can look at, but the kids are going to school today, and those solutions do take a long time, and I think they're important to look at, but we need to make sure that we're eliminating this behavior in these very dangerous environments. So counties not having this tool, I think, would be a big disservice to communities, and so we would urge an unfavorable report on this bill, and I'm open to any questions.
Well, before I recognize Delegate Terraza, you saw that picture of the 4-lane highway, right?
Yeah.
Didn't strike you as a little odd that that vehicle would be cited, given that configuration?
Because there's no median there, or can you be more specific?
Because it's so far away and,
Well, that's what I was saying, is that, when you're traveling at highway speed in those situations, something going wrong, if you have some cars that are stopping and some that are not, that's what we're ultimately trying to protect from. So no, that doesn't look like, when I'm just looking at a still picture, a really bad situation. But in the worst case scenario, it is pretty tricky. And I think the medians, that could be a solution to a degree, but I think a car going, 30, 35 miles per hour that swerves could potentially end up in the opposite lane. If that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to get to the issue of recidivism. Delegate Moon testified that the numbers aren't going down. I guess your position is that they'd be going up? Is that?
So when you get a citation, we have found that individuals that get a citation are less likely to make that perpetration again.
But it sounds like just whether it's the same people or different people, the same number of people are breaking law in the same way, which it doesn't really matter whether there's recidivism or they're the same people. They're causing the same amount of danger.
Yes, which is also why I would say looking at a study and doing a lot more education for the public could help get those numbers down, for sure. But in terms of the people who do get the citation, the behavior does change.
Is MACO okay with the burden of doing that education being on the counties?
I think it's something we can talk about, for sure, but I think for us the most important thing is being able to change the behavior right now and look into some of those solutions. And I think taking that ability right now away would put the cart before the horse a little bit, I think.
Okay, and then you described this as dangerous circumstances. Do you have a position on whether bus stops should be able to be on roads like that?
I don't know that I would be able to speak to MACO having a position on something like that, but in terms of the convenience or the inconvenience of moving them, I can talk to you a little bit about what it would take to get these bus stops off of these highways. And so when let's say we've got 5, on a highway going in a direction, if you just move it back into the neighborhood, you're adding, what is that? That's about 4 turns that bus would have to make per stop if it's going to just go around the block. So that's not just a matter of taking them off the highway, that's, slowing them down. That's, we might need to have change the route completely and change multiple routes, add more buses. I mean, when they're taking, 4 turns times 5, I mean, you're going to get to school by maybe 3rd period. So it's not as easy as just moving it back into the neighborhood.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And I have worked extensively as a council member before I got here on trying to get bus stops moved where they were in dangerous circumstances. But I guess I would just disagree with the characterization of it, of the inconvenience. I mean, if we're talking about the safety of kids, it's not just about, maybe there needs to be an additional bus or a longer bus route so that they're not standing on highways where this becomes an issue, but it's just.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something to consider. And I was more or less painting the picture that it's not just that it's inconvenient to move the bus stops, it's a little bit trickier than that, which is how I was trying to characterize it.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've only been in this committee for a couple of weeks now, and I hear the terminology being thrown around about recidivism and things that stop people from speeding and stop people from running stop signs and that type of stuff. Where's the data? I would think MACO might have the data. Would you mind sharing the data with us?
So I don't have it readily available, but that's certainly something that I can work towards getting for you, no question. And I would also say that I did have a chance to speak with Delegate Moon and the counties that are looking to implement these. We're going to get together a group of stakeholders to really talk about what this information looks like and how we can get more of it, no question, especially in conjunction with State Highways Administration.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, there appear to be no further questions. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 849. We are going to adjourn for how long? Okay, in 5 minutes, we're going to have our first voting session. Be there or be square.
Is anybody else having problems with the court system? Yes. Okay, so I talked to OIS and they are having a problem and they're working on it. They did a code revision or something. And I said, that's not good.
They probably poured a cup of coffee down the floor.